this month. Let's open the meeting. Can we please give any apologies? Probably not that Councillor Gibson is in the building but isn't here. He is, and we haven't received an apology from Councillor Roy, have we? Any declarations? Sorry, we have. Oh, we don't move that, do we? Because there's no apologies. Can we have any declarations of interest, please? None. For petitions or deputations.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes.
Look, would I have a conflict of interest being a trustee of the Midtown Wilding Tree Trust?
If you want to raise it, that's fine.
I will.
Okay. Yes. So we, it's been registered. We have to move that meeting. Just have to move that. Thank you. Public forum, petitions and deputations. No. Received. No. Thank you. Can we please move the confirmation of the minutes of the ICM on 20th January, please? Thank you. No discussion? Any discussion? Thank you.
Also got one Tuesday meeting as well.
Oh, yep, sorry. And yes, minutes to be confirmed for the Integrated Catchment Management Committee meeting with the Catchment Liaison Chairs on the 24th of February. Lyndall, thank you. And David, seconded. Any discussion on those minutes?
Yeah, just not a question, Chairman, but just to say that that was the most amicable of those meetings that I've been to in a long time, both from the staff perspective and particularly the chairs. They were in fine form and was a really constructive and helpful discussion. So thanks to everybody that contributed to that, making that happen.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question for a bit of clarity into the Ureti of Dave Marshall. Can someone just remind me what that 7.5 metre rule was there?
It's about grazing.
It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
Jeffrey. So it's a setback. It's a part of the Bible. Things within 7.5 metres of the bank have certain criteria around what you can and can't do.
Close to the flood bank you're talking about.
Yeah, it's to do with the Bible.
Yes.
Which we'll cover off tomorrow in the hearing.
That's right. It's got a law in it.
But yes.
Yeah, just a couple of points that came out of here that keep popping up. So under Hugh's comments around F-class responsibilities and the lack of uplift. So it was about the issue sort of come up yesterday too. Now that we've gone to full capability rating, instead of having particular rates on areas around a targeted rating, there are new areas now. 16% of the catchment in the terrace case is now being rated extra, and there's no extra in the budget. So I'm just flagging it as an issue that needs to be discussed at some stage.
Yeah, and I think we need to revisit the LTP because that decision came out of the LTP and there'll be clear guidance as what was to agree to, which I think will help form that conversation about where things are, because I do talk to Lucy about this, that I think we need to revisit the LTP to look at what was agreed to and signed off on to give clarity to this, to answer this question. So can we, yes, can we?
Just through your chair, just to add to that. So yes, the team have been doing some work on what are the outstanding questions that need direction from the council on following the LTP decisions, and this is one. So the team are preparing to bring back to you a couple of options about what does it look like for the implementation of the rating review decisions. So yeah, we'll be back with more information and for you seeking your direction.
It's a big and evolving issue. We even had people coming out field based saying, I've got work that needs done now that I'm paying capital rate, lots of stories, so, yeah, that's good. And, yeah, I think that's the main issue. Or there was something under 7, it was noted that the implications of the rating review had not been fully explained. Council intended to develop draft material and engage further with Catchment liaising committees to ensure they had opportunity to understand and respond to the proposed changes. What was that about, really?
I think that'll get captured in exactly what we're discussing here. I think that'll definitely get captured.
Same sort of issues, but maybe others as well.
Yes.
Yep, exactly. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Excellent. Righto, so we've had the movers. Yep. Thank you. There's a beat. Okay, so all in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Notifications of extraordinary or any urgent business? No?
Questions?
We haven't any questions? No? And I just will mention before I forget, us aiming in the agenda to stop for a cuppa after the Catchment Liaison Committee's annual general meetings update. We'll stop 10 minutes because this is quite a large chunky meeting. So cool. Chairman and Councillor reports.
I'll just verbal one just in regards, obviously. You'll be able to tell me the right name. The Aquifer Group had a field day this week, and Morris and Alistair were involved too. So it was really interesting seeing the. I just took a very big interest in the use of ecotane and pasture mixes, and the work that's done at University or Lincoln College, Lincoln University, I should say. There's some real good data coming out of that, long-term analysis of it, and also then going out onto the farms, Stephen Clark's place, property, seeing how they're just broadcasting it on, and it was growing, and just how you manage it. Exciting stuff, and sort of getting a bit of data to back up the gains involved in it. And also, thanks, John, you've got a project and a half there, working with the wetland you're doing down there, and it's just great seeing these catchment groups getting their heads around what they're dealing with, the issues. So it was a good day, really good day. Thanks for that. I don't know if anybody else wants to.
Well, I've got a written report, but I'll send it to the council maker. So that was on the record.
Report to share, if I might. Yesterday I attended the 17th National Freshwater Conference in Auckland, speaking as a member of a 4-person panel on the intersecting topics of resource management reform, environmental regulation, and local government reforms. I was there because the invite went to the chair and he bounced it to me, so that's why I got there. The conference was run jointly with the Environment and Resource Management Law Update Conference, and the initial sessions and up to morning tea were delivered in a combined setting. During the panel discussion, my overarching message was the importance of approaching reform with a design for democracy approach as a guiding star. I suggested that was going to be important on the basis that if reform is to be enduring and not resisted, challenged, and contested by citizens and businesses, which would incur significant costs, then it's important that there's a sense of system legitimacy and fairness within the design of the reform that emerges. And I suggested that that design for democracy approach needs to include the 3 complementary elements of democratic legitimacy, treaty legitimacy, and ecological legitimacy. And this approach is probably in contrast with what seems to be the current focus on efficiency and centralisation of decision-making authority in respect of proposed resource management and local government reforms. It was interesting, all the speakers on the panel expressed optimism for the benefits of regional spatial planning, but expressed concerns that at the short time horizons for delivery of the first iteration of regional spatial plans, and the likelihood that the opportunity for public engagement and consultation would very highly likely be compromised if undue haste is demanded by central government. Public engagement and consultation on that regional spatial planning was considered essential given the significant influence and importance of regional spatial plans within a reformed resource management system. All of the speakers agreed that introducing the construct of regulatory relief would deliver negative outcomes in general over time. Beyond the panel discussion, there was a diverse range of speakers on a variety of topics. Nitrate contamination in groundwater was a topic of interest, with an engaging presentation by Earth Science New Zealand researcher Connie Stritter. Dr. Craig Dupree from Dairy NZ spoke on dairy efforts to improve stream health. I did wonder if the Dairy NZ focus on stream health as opposed to catchment health somewhat missed the importance of adopting an integrated catchment management perspective. Probably the most inspirational presentation came from NZ Land Care Trust staff. They provided an overview of Southern Waikato-based ecological corridor project. The central idea is to restore pockets of native forestry and wetlands strategically positioned to provide kind of stepping stones for birds. And it was pretty interesting to realise that there's a bunch of native birds that have got a really short range of 100 to 300 metres from their existing bush habitat. So if you want to encourage them to spread out, you kind of need to provide an incentive for them to go a little bit further to use the bush as a bit of a stepping stone. And there was kind of a really interesting recognition that there's a correlation between bird diversity and stream health. So when you've got healthy, flourishing native bird life, you also seem to have a healthy, flourishing stream life as well. And it seemed to me there would probably be an excellent opportunity for something of projects of that nature here in Southland in the future. Also in a sideline discussion with Mountains to Sea Conservation Trust outlined the National Inanga Spawning Program. And that's relevant as it drives a strong focus on the health of estuaries and tidal reaches of rivers and streams. So this represents a practical focus on some of the most critical receiving environments in our regions and rivers. And I stand to date there have been some preliminary engagement between the Trust and Thriving Southland on the potential for more work in their region on that one. And I flagged this as a program that the Council and ICM Committee might want to monitor and potentially encourage and support in the future.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that thorough report, Phil. It's great. Awesome. Do we have any more reports? No, thank you. Taken as received. Excellent. Righto. Next we have Simon Stokes with his team of land sustainability, biodiversity, and you've got a little bit of time up your sleeve. We're ahead of time already, Simon. So you're wanting to introduce yourself and your team to us, please.
Yes, tēnā koe Chair, thank you. Tēnā koutou Roranga Tira Mā, and tēnā koe Chief Executive. Yeah, before I sit down, councillors, and introduce myself a little more, because you've never met me yet, and I've been here since September. I just want to introduce my team as well, because some of you are new perhaps, and you probably aren't aware of who's at the coalface out in the catchment, so to speak. So I'll just go around the room. So I've got Lana Johnston here. Lana Johnston, who's the program lead. Craig Smith, team leader, lead sustainability. Jess Argate, Jess works YR catchment. Michael Hargraves, biodiversity across the region. Nate Chandrakumar. Nate works in the Mataura, but also particularly over in the Catlins area as well. Keith Finlayson, who will be familiar to you all. Keith's in the already, but also does the work with our leasehold land as well. Moving across, Chris Rowe. Chris is employed to work in the Aparima catchment and along the coast towards Tuatapere. And Brennan Mayer, who works in the Mataura as well. And the only one missing at this stage is Anastasia Raymond, who some of you will know as well. Anastasia works in the already catchment as well, but is also part of the Mataura and also is going to focus on the Waiho Pai. Katrina Gow's missing in action, biodiversity, and Polly Williams away on leave at the moment. I think that's everyone, is it, team? Rob Bird. Oh, the famous Rob Bird.
Yeah.
No, he's not here because he's somewhere else. Yeah, so if you don't mind, through your chair, Councillors, you're probably wondering who is this new land sustainability biodiversity manager. So a little bit of a brief background to myself. So while I still have a fairly youthful complexion, I've been working in regional council work since 1995. And I started work in the King Country based in Taumaranui back in 95 and worked for what was then Manawatu Whanganui Regional Council. And I think Chief Executive, you were over in Taranaki at the time. Bill Bayfield was just cutting his teeth. And I did everything that a regional council person could do there, but particularly worked in soil conservation. In those days, we were called soil conservators. And probably the most interesting time I had there was the Indigenous Forest Act came out in '96. And so I spent a lot of time working with MPIs, Indigenous forest people, trying to manage the state of affairs in the King Country during that time, which was very interesting. Moved to Hawke's Bay Regional Council after that, worked there for 10 years, specialised in farm planning, and I suppose in some ways thought about a modernisation and a refocusing of what farm planning could be to, but not just regional councils, but perhaps the primary sector in general. So I've had quite a lot of involvement working literally in the field with that. After that, I moved to Bay of Plenty Regional Council, and I was there for from 2008 to 2018. I moved into management, and I ran the land management and biodiversity programs and catchment programs for that council. All that time based in Whakatane. And you got involved in a lot of things to do with council, and the career moved through quite nicely to where I thought it might go, and worked up GM level for a little while, but eventually moved out of council and went to Beef and Lamb New Zealand. I suppose if you're interested, I did a lot of catchment programming work, a lot of catchment work based in Bay of Plenty while I was there. So I sort of saw the entry of that, particularly with NPS Freshwater, and then walked out, having worked in it and being part of the design of how it would land. And of course, you have all the other experiences you had for that time. While I was in the regional council system, I was the land managers group convener for about a decade. I actually chaired the panel of the Sustainable Farming Fund, you might remember, for about 10 years on behalf of MPI, independent. I was on the trust of the Balanced Farm Environment Awards at national level. And just, I suppose I've had my fingers in a lot of pies, and I've been heavily invested in regional council business all that time. Went to Beef and Lamb and worked there as the environment strategy manager. And in fact, the other time I wore a tie in here was when Rob was chief executive, and I came down here to present on Beef and Lamb's work to councillors. Some of you may remember that really exciting speech at the time. But what we were really introducing then was something called the New Zealand Farm Assurance Program, which I had a lot of involvement with designing with Beef and Lamb New Zealand and the Red Meat Profit Partnership. And lastly, but not least, I left Beef and Lamb and went to work on my own little business before I came here for 5 years. Sort of a sabbatical from regional council, actually. It was really interesting being on the other side. And I worked in two main projects. One, I set up a predator-free 2050 program working for Ngāti Awa, iwi based in Whakatane. So we set that up from Wau to go to eliminate possums out of 4,000 hectares. And also led our land, our water science challenge program called Revitalise Te Taio for 4.5 years, which has been quite successful actually in what it's achieved since. So I'm quite proud of that. And so that's me in a nutshell. So just to give you some confidence, perhaps behind the paper that's in front of you, is that I've had a bit of experience in this stuff. I'm glad to be in Southland. I came down here for the challenge and also to get back closer working with farmers, to be honest. There's not a lot of farming people in the Bay of Plenty, to be fair. So that's why my wife and I have moved back down here. So that's just a little brief, Chair, and I'll start on my paper now if that's all right.
No, perfect. Great to have you on board. Thank you.
Yeah, so councillors, I put in front of you essentially paper land sustainability and biodiversity program of work, and it covers off two things, but mainly a backdrop to, I suppose, an interpretation of what we need to do for the next 10 years with regards to a core focus on land sustainability and biodiversity. And I also just bring you up to date on just some of the activities that we've been doing since I wrote the paper, and we've probably moved a bit further in the results of those since. I'm not going to read it, take it as read, Chair. I just want to highlight a couple of points and then provide just a little brief 12-slide presentation too, if that's all right. So essentially this document provides you on what we're going to achieve as far as the outcomes with regards to this land sustainability and biodiversity work for the next 10 years. I really want a solid 10-year program in place. And one of the main reasons for that is I want to see a solid program work through the next few years as we head through perhaps some change with regards to local government reform and other burning issues. And the basis for the program is one that, regardless of all that change, farmers will be able to have confidence and gain support from what we're trying to achieve for them, because nothing will really change at farm gate level. I've provided a bit of a setting with regards to Southland, which is a little bit of my own interpretation, and a little bit of that is actually geared by a lot of the research work I did on the literature produced by this council to give me the backdrop, particularly the erosion strategy itself that was completed in 2025. And to give you some confidence too in the paper, I did load it up with just providing you with the nature of where the program, what it feeds from. So with regards to program specific outcomes to Te Mahi Waroa, long-term plan, down to the inside that where we're coming from. So these programs that we've got here are not just popping up out of the blue, they are driven by what you've asked us to do. So the land sustainability program essentially is based around principally probably 5 key areas on page 21. One is delivering an intensive winter grazing program, which is a mixture of on-farm delivery work by the staff with regards to helping farmers understand the nature of intensive winter grazing and other elements of their farm business, but also delivering educational field days, etc., of which we've got 4 coming up in April. So that's a core focus. Second core focus is the Catchment Improvement Fund, for which we've got funding in our budget to deliver on-farm mitigation works, whatever that may be with regards to, actually it's not whatever it may be, we've just drafted standard operating procedures to more precisely contain what that may be. And so there's criteria that are here designed to support eligibility categories as well, so that we really are focusing that program on funding things that are going to make the change that we're looking for and not just random stuff. That budget sitting in there, I'm looking to increase that within the current budget setting for 26-27 to provide more funding for farmers. So it should go from 160 to 300,000. At the rate that we're looking to fund farms, that will increase our projects by perhaps doing twice as many, but it is a bit dependent on how many farmers come forward and what the cost of those projects are. That Catchment Improvement Fund has got a much more directive focus now into what I call the rolling hill country of the region, and I'll explain that map up behind the chair when I get to show you a few slides. And the reason for that is that that countryside was roughly just under 700,000 hectares of our landscape that is in the rolling hill country category, so to speak, of which that is where we have our perhaps greatest risk with regards to the nature of the issues that we have to deal with. And it's also where we've got the farmers who probably need the most guidance and confidence. So it is a fairly directive approach under that program to put funding and exercise into that part of the region, as opposed to having a carte blanche across the board. Although no farmers are excluded from our work, I have given it strong direction. I've given the team strong direction on that, and I'll explain that a bit later. We also, one of the key platforms, although the team behind me are not the freshwater farm plan team, there's no denying the fact that farm planning, freshwater farm planning, or however you want to call it, is a key part of our work at the moment. And so all of this work that we're doing is designed to have a strong interactive relationship with the freshwater farm planning team so that there's no misalignment. And in fact, currently that team, the freshwater team, are also bringing us projects that we can do with the catchment improvement funding. And on the opposite side of the coin, the staff are looking at opportunities where they can step the freshwater farm planning team into helping farmers more comprehensively. But fundamentally, I'm looking to have the whole team in land sustainability in particular really comfortable with being able to step into farm planning understanding and delivery as much as possible. There's no denying the fact that this whole planning business is really crucial to actually moving farm businesses forward in a really appropriate way for themselves and for us. Fourth part of it is based on catchment communities. Let's read that: catchment communities, catchment groups. And Southland has a very strong catchment group business with Thriving Southland, coordinating and facilitating that. So we're going to be as involved with them as possible and leverage as much through them getting engagement and moving our farmers forward as best as we can, along with the other agencies that are attached to that that side of things as well. And the last one there is just providing that general land management advisory service, which has been quite reactionary over the years based on requests. But we're moving to a more proactive regime starting July the 1st, where the team will be targeting farms as per that map over there. And I'm looking to have the team cross the cattle stocks of at least 240 to 300 farms a year for the next 5 years. And that should allow us to meet just about every farmer, certainly every farmer on that map over the next 5 years. And that way we will have at least some relationship and engagement with them and be able to help them as much as possible, because there's no point in us not going over the cattle stock. It's only going to work if we're engaged with them.
So a question, this is great that we've got a 10-year plan. That's awesome. My question is around that giving advice. How do we align that with compliance? Because that's a bit of a gap at the moment. How do you see that engagement working?
Yeah, in the paper, I haven't ignored the fact that we have compliance requirements, we have rules. The team are well versed in compliance and rules. They've been supporting compliance over the years. That's not changing. We're still active in that space. It's just that I'm trying to move them towards finding a slightly more middle ground with regards to being able to guide people so that they don't have to be in a position where compliance is something that is about a breach. It's more a normal state of business. And so you've got to find that middle ground, Chair, as opposed to working from one specific perspective. And that's, I suppose, from 30 years of experience. So no, we're not stepping away from our role with regards to doing what council asks us to do, but it's just how we promote it and how we put it forward. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah.
David, then Nelson, please.
Yeah, just not sure about that. And I guess my view would be it should be about outcomes. And sometimes council gets bogged down in rules that you broke the rule, but there was no bad outcome, but all of a sudden you're a criminal. So it's about fight, because that's where you lose confidence. So that's more what I would think about it. So do you agree with?
Through you, Chair, look, 100%, Councillor. That's if I haven't kind of made that clear, and sometimes I'm not, that middle ground is about meeting what you're asking for. And so we're not. I have changed things really, I suppose, a little bit from the last year or so, where there's kind of strong compliance direction with the team, and I'm moving them into that middle ground where compliance is still fundamental for what we need to do, but it's how we do that. And we're doing it through these programs I'm outlining that is much more about supporting the farmers in their businesses to move forward. Because if you're looking and working with a farmer to move their businesses forward, then that compliance stuff becomes another part of their business, just as it is for making sure your drench regime for the lands go right, or the wool pack has got the right weight, those sorts of things. So it's fitting into the scheme of things, basically. So, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and we aren't going to be able to do any of our work if we just run who are led by essentially doing compliance only. Yeah.
Simon, I think things have got to change significantly because in the last year or so, we've been tangled up in several situations where your group came and gave them advice, and then all of a sudden the compliance people come round and it's a totally different story. So I'll be watching carefully as to how that sort of combines and works, because really, and especially when you go up to your freshwater farming plans, the same thing is that within the one organisation, you've got someone who is advancing something, but you also got somebody who's chopping it off. And my example is with the banks, they used to write out budgets. They don't now because they get caught in two places. So I think we've got to be fairly well aware of that.
Through you, Chair. No. So just to support what Simon was saying and responding to Councillor Gibson's question, your comments totally agree with the thrust of those. I mean, it's important that we're outcome focused and not gravitating instantaneously to a particular approach. Some of these issues really need to be worked through in developing. We were revisiting a compliance and enforcement policy this year and looking to combine that into one document. And that also works to how we move down the spectrum of compliance to achieve the outcome we're looking for. So Simon, myself and Donna and Lacey and others have got some good dialogue starting around that, and we'll keep working through that.
Yes. So you're getting out of the siloed approach, which is really good.
Yeah, but through the Chair, the intensive winter grazing group that works internally in council is exactly what Bruce is alluding to as well. And so we're all working together a lot more cohesively to actually deliver what councillors are asking for. And this program here is not siloed away from that. The inside of this writing in here is quite comfortably conveying that we work in both spaces basically. Yeah. So
Just to qualify that a little though, we've certainly got some strong scrutiny at the other end of the spectrum. Saying we aren't being tough enough on compliance. So there's a range of views and there's a range of approaches. And importantly, try and tailor our approach between the different arms of our organisation to land in an appropriate response that gets us to the outcome we're looking for.
It's exciting to hear that you're working together. Great.
It's a collaborative and integrated environment, isn't it? And just lastly,
So we've got one more question here.
No, mine can wait till Simon's finished.
right, just lastly, Chair, we're not ignoring the forestry sector. So there's a program in there with regards to the forestry sector, and Keith Finlayson is our senior land sustainability officer who works primarily in that space, and I'll be joining him as well. And then lastly, of course, we don't ignore our responsibilities about helping to train and educate and work within the school environment through our Environmental Schools program, which is pretty darn superb. Moving on from the land sustainability program, we've got the biodiversity program as well. Actually, before I move off that, just in one of the highlights too, I am making progress with the Waikaka Catchment group to look at having a demonstration, perhaps type farm. I wouldn't say research at this stage, but demonstration type farm where we're going to work more together to actually probably achieve some of the stuff the councillors are asking about. So explore what things they'd like to do with regards to meeting the requirements of farming going forward. And also I'm looking to reignite certainly work in the Waihopai with one of the staff working in there pretty much full time to bring a more of a living streams approach between the urban and rural space within the Waihopai, in particular because it is comes down and through into town. I should say city.
The Waihopai, the living streams process, I was involved in that.
All right.
So when you say the same sort of thing, the bit that impressed me that was really good was you looked for opportunities to fix water quality, you did stuff, and then you monitored to make sure it made a difference.
Yeah.
Because that's the bit that really gets people on board. You get told this is going to make a difference, but it's good to have some evidence to show that it actually met the mark. Yeah. So is that what you're talking about?
Yes, through you, Chair, that's exactly what we're talking about.
That's good.
Did you meet Anastasia?
Yes, I met her yesterday.
So we'll be giving you a call, Councillor. The biodiversity program, just to move over to that as well, again, it's got essentially a 10-year core focus, and principally it's based around 4 key things. One is starting this year, it's underway this year, but it will hit its stride come July the 1st, is the Key Native Ecosystems program. We will be looking to work with landowners out there to put in place biodiversity management plans on the back of ecological surveying to really harness the biodiversity management required at those sites. It's very similar to the way that Taranaki Regional Council delivers their Key Native Ecosystem program, and I'm really looking forward to picking up a lot of projects through that. I think I mentioned in the paper, but biodiversity is one of those areas that is complex. But we're trying to do the very best we can to provide service to farm businesses that moves them forward, so that at a point in time they can pick up their own biodiversity management and deliver it to the way that might be required, particularly if they have biodiversity credits. We've got our community grant scheme, which was kicked off just before Christmas. It was fully taken up. I think they've all just about got their funds. I think there's one more to sign off. And we will keep that going as well. It's very important to keep the funding going into those strong community projects around highly valuable sites that exist. We've also just, we're looking to keep our educational workshops going throughout the year. And that's really the biodiversity program, and it's really focused on actually trying to harness that biodiversity habitat out there that is significant. And I'll show you a slide of that. Yeah, right now, actually, if that's all right. So, Chair, do you mind if I just move to the next little bit?
Yes.
So, I didn't put this on slide, councillors, because it's a bugger of a thing to look at on a slide. But basically, I know it'll be tricky to see from there, but you can look at it. It's just essentially when I mentioned the program of where we're going to prioritise a little bit more of our work. This is essentially the rolling hill country of the Southland area. So it's if you're like me and our chief executive and understand a bit of land use capability, it's the class 3 and 4 landscape. So that's where we're going to focus. It doesn't ignore our knowledge and working focus with regards to physiographics. It just gives us a bit more detail over where we're going to focus.
So the colours are physiographic signs, is that what
you're saying? No, these are just a representation of LUC polygons all through here, or land use capability polygons. Yeah, which is inside the physiographics anyway. Yeah. So that's just that map. So that gives you a perspective. There's a lot of country in Southland in that category, and 2/3 of that, nearly 700,000 hectares, is over 8 degrees. So you can get the perspective as to why we need to perhaps focus on that a little bit more.
So being the red?
No. It's not. No, the red's not all 8 degrees. 8 degrees is within a whole lot of the colours.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, up on the slides. Can't do much without having a look at some slides. If it works. Oh, there we go. So, councillors, I've just got 10 slides just to put a visual to what I'm talking about here. This is just a classic slide of what a situation would be for one of the staff working in the field, looking at a fairly standard rolling hill country piece of landscape. So you've got your rolling landscape, you've got a crop, and you've got your little gully system coming into vogue there. Just to give you a perspective on what might happen with regards to the landscape on the left-hand side, you've got some what we call sheet erosion, some might call it rill erosion, essentially the type of erosion that might occur off some of that sort of landscape. And of course, you can't get away from the fact that we also do have wind erosion here as well. So it's just reminding you of the sorts of things we deal with. If that light up the front was off, Michaela, that would really help. If you don't mind switching that off, thank you. Thank you very much. Just to give you an example of the type of work that we do, so that's a classic picture of a farm aerial view, and you're looking down at basically some of the stream retirement work that's going to occur in there. So that's just a presentation of the type of format that we use to work with our clients, work with the farmers. Another example of, I suppose, classic country whereby we're actually putting in place what you saw on the map. So you've got standard slopes coming down with your usual infill valley systems, swampy areas. And that's the site that we've actually had funding into to remove out of the farming system. This one here is a large shallow earth flow that the guys have picked up into a project with farmers, with a farm, and pretty hard to see the planting through there, but that's another part of our work, which is general erosion control work with planting, in this case, spaced poplars. This series of 3 photos here show you the start and finish of a very large constructed wetland. So you have the young fella there on the farm. This is near Riversdale. He's at the bottom of a very low angle CSA. Farmer's done a huge amount of work there to put this in place and started to plant the left-hand side. And then the last photo here, which I'm sorry is tiny, but it'll give you kind of the context of the type of work the team do with constructed wetlands. So it's quite a large exercise, this one, and I would say fairly high cost as well. And the next slide is really just showing you that we still do fairly standard riparian work, basically still across the region with regards to where the funding goes. And lastly, just with regards to the type of funding projects we do, here's an example of what we could do, and this is a detainment bund. And this is with a research detainment bund up in the North Island. And so on the left, you've got the area that was constructed, and on the right, you've got it in full noise with the water inside it. Something that we're looking to explore more as part of the criteria and funding, although this is not necessarily a cheap exercise either. And just drifting into catchment groups, just an example of us in the Waikawa catchment, about to head into part of the Waikawa catchment groups, one of the farm's biodiversity blocks there that he has had fenced for quite a while. And lastly, in land sustainability, just a general picture of forestry, just to remind you again that forestry is a key element of the types of primary sector activity we've got in the region. This map here on the left-hand side shows you the extent of the key native ecosystems that are spread throughout the Southland area. On this is all on private land. It's a phenomenal amount actually that exists, and it's made up of the colouring is made up of a range of interpretations, from high value area interpretation by wildlands through to I can't remember the other reasons, but it is a large extent of landscape there. And that's just a photo on the right hand side just to show you the type of remnant forest vegetation that we would be looking to deal with. A day down at Sandy Point with regards to the biodiversity program, and we're working with community groups. And lastly, again, just highlighting that the biodiversity program team run the workshops with the community, and this one was just recently at Thompson's Bush on pest plant management. I think Katrina was running. Yeah. And that's it, Chair. That's just a quick run through of a range of, I suppose, projects that we're doing, the reasons why, the area that we're looking to focus on, and those sorts of things. So happy to take more questions.
Thanks, Simon. I think Jeremy.
Yeah, I actually had a question. Great photos. Just step back a wee bit. Just regarding requests and around shelter belt planting. Obviously, took quite a bit of focus in October the 23rd last year. Farmers, obviously, even managing shelter belts now, focusing on doing a bit more trimming and getting them down a better size. Is there a different approach to shelter belt planting now? Are we sort of, or a farmer? I'm just saying, what are people thinking?
That's
After that event.
Through you, Chair, that's a very good question. And after the storm, the team have spent quite a bit of time thinking about species selection and what sort of advice to provide to farmers, because there were some requests. And we've got to be careful of some of these species now that relate to wilding as well. So there's quite a stronger emphasis on native species, but not all native species are going to perhaps hit the mark. So it is a bit of horses for courses, and I suppose the real answer to that is just we're trying to improve our knowledge, in which there's a lot of historical knowledge that's valuable, but apply it in a way now on farm at site that actually makes sense, so that we don't end up perhaps in the situation where we do have old man's makakarpa as opposed to perhaps a slightly different species. It's quite tricky actually finding species when you start to stop looking at wilding type species as well. It's not the easiest thing in the world actually.
Thank you.
Thanks. A couple of a question for Simon and a question for you, Chair. Firstly, Simon, thanks very much for a forward-looking and comprehensive program. Actually, it's my 9.5 years now. It's the first, so thank you. I also appreciated that you identified the risks very clearly, and even better, they're all low or medium low. So that's fantastic. But my question for you actually is about the youth engagement and acknowledging your very kind comments about the EnviroSkills program that already exists. I'm wondering if you've applied any thought to the upper secondary school employment opportunity part of your work as far as non-traditional vocational training, and whether there's any way, and amongst your already extensive work program, that you could be reaching out to some of those agencies or some of the young people who are at school, because I see them, some of them say, "Miss, all I want to do is go and kill possums," and of course the flow-on effect of that to recruitment for us as far as people who are in the program. So just to ask that you perhaps apply some thought to how some of that might integrate across some of your other things. Chairman, question for you. I'm wondering actually if we need, the recommendation is to receive the report, but actually I'm wondering if it, depending on how my colleagues feel, whether an extra recommendation would be to endorse the program rather than just receive it, but it might be inappropriate at this point. I don't know.
So recommendation actually is incorrect.
Okay. So I guess
So yes.
Just flagging the recommendation is for the
can people
auxiliary.
indicate they're happy with to endorse all
Questions first?
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Simon, thank you. I was really interested in the approach you've mapped out with, literally mapped out on the map. Do we know of that land, what percentage is in different types of farm operations? For example, what percentage is dairy, what percentage is beef and lamb versus forestry? Is there a sense of that? And the reason I ask this is we are under some advocacy groups in the region are asking us to declare a nitrate emergency, for example, and we are yet to consider that next month. If we were, as a council, to think that was a good idea or otherwise, what would the implications be of that in respect of the focusing in this area? Would that respond to, for example, nitration?
Through you, Chair, that's a very good question, and no, that hasn't been part of that interpretation. One of the staff has underlaid all of that with farm properties so that we know where we're going. But I could probably quite accurately suggest that none of it is forestry, because it is the type of land that's highly productive, and it would have to be perhaps the odd farm in the last 2 or 3 years that might have been purchased for carbon forestry, but nearly all of that will be dairy and sheep and beef and deer country. And so no, I haven't got the split in there. It's a very good question actually. I have got a lot of beef and lamb economic data. I'll have a look inside that. I just picked it up recently. But principally, I think most of it will be actually sheep and beef, either from my own interpretation of Southland driving around, because the nature of that landscape is certainly not flat.
Right.
Okay, at least 2/3 of it is going to have a slope angle at roughly 8 degrees or higher. So I'm not saying dairy don't use that landscape, but principally they're more on the flat land. So yeah, predominantly I'd say it'd be sheep and beef, personally.
Right.
But I haven't got accurate numbers on that.
And I guess the follow-on is, does the concept plan for the 10 years, I know that it's adjustable at the time. But and the near-term stuff is more difficult to respond to quickly. I guess there's a question of, is there redundancy or flexibility within the plan? So if priorities were to shift, that resources could be reallocated to achieve outcomes in potentially different locations or with different land managers. That would to me would be ideal.
Through you, Chair, look, that's a brilliant comment, and I suppose that's the management philosophy that I've got, basically, is that it is flexible and adaptive. Give you an example, if we had to push hard into a freshwater farm planning space, that we would, and the council asked for that, well, we would move to that. If we needed to work in the Gore water supply catchment, we would then work towards that. So it's not an inflexible thing, but the reason I've created this focus is that I'm generally moving away to some degree from a nitrate issue to more around the cultivatable land that's got slope angles and sediment and those sorts of issues, to help farmers that are perhaps growing into expanding or building new businesses in that way. The nitrate issue in itself is comprehensive across the board, and we've spent many decades on that. It's not ignoring it, but it's just that along with that issue, there's different reasons to solve that. This has got quite almost a different perspective to what we're trying to solve. It's all part, though, of providing each of the catchments with a delivery model that's looking at the risks relative to just working anywhere. And so that feeds into an integrated catchment program context, much more strong. So yes, 100% give the councillors comfort. We're very flexible. It's the team skill sets is what I'm looking for that provides that. They're the crucial assets in this, because it's their professional skill sets that actually allow that flexibility.
The other question was relating to evidence-based decision making, and we spoke about living streams approach, and then being able to demonstrate to stakeholders the outcomes or the difference that has been made. And I know the regional forum aspired to introducing Hawara monitoring or monitoring that included a cultural dimension to it. I know that may not be your central gig, but I would imagine there's an opportunity to collaborate with our monitoring efforts or cooperate to make sure that we are, over time, perhaps allowing for the introduction of cultural monitoring to support and provide a more detailed, rich picture of gains and or lack of gains.
Yeah, no, through you, Chair, that's actually something I've actually had quite a lot of experience in the Bay of Plenty, and I look forward to actually trying to work through those channels. I did make a comment in the paper about the fact that there's no FMU Hawara farm planning framework currently, but the programs contribute to the following sections within that document, so that I've done the research, I haven't ignored that, but there's nothing to hang my hat off in there yet, but I know the work we're doing would be complementary to whatever we evolve to.
I think Lucy's got some stuff to add to this.
Just a couple of additional points from me. So the first question that you asked, Councillor Morrison, about the land use, over the last 10 years, the science division's tracked land use changes in terms of sector. And so we've got a really good time-lapsed map of those changes over time. Not sure the last time it was updated, but it would probably be useful to recirculate to the council so that you can see some of that. And the second point was your question around the cultural monitoring piece. Again, in the science division, Karen has been working closely with Te Marama about scoping up what that project looks like. It's one of Te Marama and local Inaka's clear priorities for this triennium, and so Karen's been doing a lot of work over the last couple of months with them to actually scope up the work that would be needed to support that, which obviously Simon's team would be really crucial for the both components of delivery as well as feeding into.
The final question was, would the demo farm and the Waikaka catchment be upstream or downstream of the proposed gold mine? Currently, something to think about if we're going an answer.
Gee, I don't know.
Plenty of good farmers up that way.
Right, I've got 4 more questions. So Morris, please.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I've got 3, if that's all right.
I'm going to put a quote around on the stuff anyway.
The first one relates to your comment on page 20 and 21, bottom of 20, top 21. It talks about the susceptibility of surface erosion. And the last paragraph there says, underpinning program trajectory of research by Manaki Power, assessing Southland's erosivity, which highlighted that surface erosion, for example, contributed 92% of the model suspended sediment load in our waterways. That seemed to me to be very high. I know there's a lot of people, and I see it in documents from this council too, that they are concerned about bank erosion being a contributor to sediment in our waterways. Now, can you confirm that surface runoff is the major contributor and more so than bank erosion?
Through you, Chair, the other 8% of that 100% is from that model work is bank erosion.
Right.
The 92% they're alluding to within using SEDNet to model the region. SEDNet's interpreting a lot of physical information to provide an analysis of that. There is 92% potential of the land to have surface erosion if it was all bare ground and actually was able to be eroded. So the proportion of land, or the proportion of land that can have surface erosion, is very high in this region, but the actual amount of it is relatively going to be based on how much is actually being cultivated and has bare ground, which is considerably less when you think about it. But it gives us a perspective as to what is the actual model interpretation of a type of erosion that can occur the most. If I was in the King Country, as I referred to before, it would have been mass movement and soil slip erosion, and there would have been 92% propensity for that. So it's just giving you an indication of where the erosivity could occur. That then has underpinned the reason for working where the land is not flat per se. It has got some angle to it. And the greater the angle, the more bare ground, the more propensity for surface erosion.
Like that rill erosion you showed us. Oh,
Yes. Rill erosion's one, well, that's when sheet erosion and surface erosion gets worse, basically, and starts to dig in.
Sorry,
Maurice, just to add for the answer to your question too around the catchment summaries that we've got catchment by catchment, give a breakdown of what the load is compared from specifics for those catchments. So to Simon's answer, that's a modelled version. The catchment summaries that the science team have generated give us a more specific sediment load from each source.
Thank you. The second question is about catchment communities. I notice you haven't mentioned the Waia Trust and the Waia Working Party there. I know the Waia Working Party is set up mainly to monitor Meridian's effects on the Waiau, but I think they're keen to, I'm a member, or past chairman, and Roger's a member, and Paul has just gone, he's a member of the Waia Working Party, and I think there's a good opportunity there to work with them on projects and stuff in the Waia.
Through you, Chair, yes, 100% we'll follow that up for you. There's been my lack of knowledge because I have called to work the Waia Fencing Fund, but it's
it might be the Waia Trust that Roger actually works for, so that's a party that does a lot of good work in the Waia.
I look forward to working with the councillor to help understand that a bit more.
Thank you. And the last question, Mr. Chairman, is maybe a little bit more controversial. I apologise in advance.
It's been the next one.
What, being an urban councillor, as one excuse, what is your view on how all this expenditure, you're talking about here, 160,000, hoping to increase it to double that, on helping farmers reduce their adverse effects on the environment? What is your view on what contribution they should be making to that, rather than everybody doing it? I imagine that the farmers who do these projects put a lot of work into it themselves. But when somebody from the city says, why are you spending all this money on the farmers when they should be doing it themselves?
Yeah. Through you, Chair, short answer is that councils generally have provided funding over the years towards supporting projects that farmers do. An extent, and that's across the countryside, across New Zealand. Yeah. The second part of that is that the actual standard operating procedures we've set, and they're based on kind of what this year's work is doing, is only essentially a small fraction of the total cost of what those projects generally are. So while at the moment there's an $8,000 maximum, well, it's actually a 50% grant up to an $8,000 maximum. You may not get 8,000, it might be a $10,000 job, so you get 5,000. I know that doesn't remove the fact that we're still funding, but it's incredibly well researched that helping to fund moves things along a lot quicker, a lot more substantially, and I suppose you can't put too much more argument around it than that. And what we're doing is, I suppose, South is investing in those businesses to help them move forward to sustain and maintain that small amount of perhaps ratepayer investment at the time. If you were looking at biodiversity, for instance, we may have an upfront quite high support to a project, but the long-term cost to that farm business will be fairly substantial to sustain that piece of biodiversity in the way that it needs to give it the durability and the accountability for that farm business. And it's the same with constructive wetlands and otherwise. So, yeah, it's perhaps not the perfect answer, but it's one that most councils struggle with at time to time. We've just got to get the criteria and eligibility really spot on and make sure that it's actually delivering to the outcomes you're looking for.
There's some good examples globally of cost sharing and uptake. I guess controversially, the rural sector could ask about flood banks around town, so I guess we're all working together for the end goal, I think is what we need to be focused on. We've got quite a list here, so at risk of losing a cup of tea. Jeremy, Roger, David, Al.
I was just going to be talking about the recommendation, and it's around the financials and understanding. I think we certainly support the program and understand where it's going. I just like to say, yeah, we'd just like to see the financials, but also challenge saying, hey, this is the funding that will need to be taken to do this program. So, I mean, challenge us if needed. I mean, I'm always saying that you might not get anything, but it's always if you don't ask. And I know, and I understand, to be honest, I do understand Morris's position on some of this, that the rural sector need to get on board with this. And I know they are contributing, and we know there are farmers doing their own stuff and things like that too. So, but it is a question that always needs to be asked, that who's benefiting, things like that. So, just in that recommendation, just from the point that we're happy to do that, and almost just making sure the financial implications as we work through plans, but certainly in the long-term plan discussion. But even this year, it just looks like this next season.
Thank you, and through you, G, I will respond to that, because in the risk section, I just had that the scale of risk is high.
Yeah.
And that really was on the basis of actually getting support and approval for the program from you based on the 26-27 budget. So I don't think I'd ever thought I'd say this, but we're not looking for more. But we're quite cognizant of council's situation with regards to rating, etc. So we're going to do as best as we can within the budget we've got, and that's just that. But I'd appreciate it if we had that strategic risk come down low. So appreciate the endorsement.
The program and work with the plan is key, and that helps governance, decision making. Roger, thank you.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I've got a couple of things to work through. Some of them have been touched on, so maybe I'll sort of work through them, Simon, and give you a chance to answer if that's right. But firstly, I wanted to thank you for the comprehensive introduction to your team and yourself and the work program, which looks fantastic. So, look, picking up on some of Phil's question earlier around the LRI map, I guess I was just keen to understand if that work focus on that 3 and 4 LRI is unique to sort of particular parts of the key result programs 1 through 7 there, or if it's sort of targeted at particular parts of that only, and that kind of builds on Phil's question around where the program priority is, and I'm not disagreeing with the focus on sediment, and I think that clearly illustrates all the demonstrated issues with sediment across the region, but there's also a demonstrated N issue, and we need to I think be clear about how the council is working towards improving that situation. Similarly, really keen to understand and perhaps for you to comment on how the efficacy of the catchment improvement funding projects is assessed, and then how the effectiveness and impact is monitored, what proportion of that budget, or if there's a set program targeted to it. And then also I note that one of your program specific outcomes is around an increase in wetland habitat under management, and that there's currently, I guess, a 7-year on 7-year record of wetland extent loss in the region, and wondering how we reconcile that overall loss of wetland at a regional scale with that. And then finally, I guess, something for you to perhaps take away and think about is when you come back at some point with this program around the funding is how could there be sort of opportunities for it to move from a single fund to something that supports a multi-year piece of work, and the potential for that to result in much better outcomes. So one of my observations has been that when this type of work is undertaken, there's an injection of effort, energy, and enthusiasm, and then the maintenance that needs to come at year 2, year 3 may not be equally as high a priority, and there's a risk that we sort of lose some of the benefits because of that. So how do we think about a breadcrumb trail of funding into the future to achieve that? You don't need to address that one now.
Through you, Chair, just briefly, I think I can answer 1, 2, and 3 quite quickly. So number one, with regards to your question, the intensive winter grazing catchment improvement fund in linking through the catchment groups is while it's focused on what I've described, the other contaminants are not exempt from the focus that's occurring, because it's the mitigations on the farms that we're working towards, and they are not siloed in a sense. If we're dealing with sediment, we're dealing with phosphate and probably N as well, and E. coli. If we're dealing with wetland habitat and getting more of that, we're going to be dealing with those too. So just to give you some confidence, it's really the contaminants is a bucket that we're looking for, but I'm looking to have that activity that actually really increases the availability of them into the system as much as anything. The nitrogen problem or nitrate problem within itself has probably got more complexity to it, because it's not just directly related to mitigation solving that problem. And that relates to also the movement that farms will do around emissions into the future. So it's quite a complex space. Second thing is that I really like what you were saying, asking about the efficacy of the projects. I haven't put in here the measures I've got against some of these programs, but it's quite tricky with regards to the Catchment Improvement Fund. At one project level, it's about hectares of land use change. That's a very simple measure, but it is effective. The other side of it comes back to our overall monitored understanding of waterways in particular. And so it's working much more closely with what Lucy was saying before about the science that's within the catchments, to give us a true catchment perspective to see how we're monitoring change. And I think that's a space that's yet to evolve more critically here, so that we can see how things are travelling, because it's that monitoring really that should be driving what programs we're doing where. The third thing was, wetland loss. Look, that's a big focus, because the SIF program in particular is the planning work is trying to provide more protection of that habitat on farm that actually is already in situ, as opposed to building more. It's the cheapest, most effective habitat that you can find, and it's also effective in regards to the mitigation. So why do we keep digging up stuff and trying to build more when it's much less expensive to do that? So it's really focusing on that habitat space and increasing that. And while you know yourself, there's about 12 different types of wetland ecosystems, so it'll be focusing on those ones that are seeps and in situ wetlands. Lastly, a lot of that answer is going to be geared around how we relate and fold into the integrated catchment management program that the council will move into.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, on the Catchment Improvement Fund, it would be good to have some detail over the sort of projects and how they bring out. I guess my take on it is that it's great to have a field day to show people what can be done and inspire them, because there's nothing like going to a practical thing. It's working with reasoning, and then that flows through the community. So, at times, many years ago, people were just getting free fencing, and that wasn't much else happening. So, there's those two things to weigh up, just the proof that you're doing stuff and that it's got good outcomes. So that's really good. And I know there's other factors that we haven't got in that paper. Secondly, when you're talking about erosion in some of this stuff, it's a wee bit like Morris's question. So a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, when I was liaison co-chair, and we're dealing with consent about crossing rivers and things, we got some Environment South and did some testing of what a fresh in a river was. It was a March fresh. It wasn't the largest for the year. It was about the 4th biggest. And it was 172 tonnes of sediment in the air going downstream at a time when there's no wintering happening. So I guess I flagged that as an issue where sediment's coming from, and that if we're doing away with silos and working more integrated, I think you would put your weight also behind things like gravel extraction in places where it leads to erosion and expenditure out of the catchment budget. It's a lose-lose-lose situation, crazy, in certain areas, not talking about everywhere, but when I was, only a few months ago, we were going up, and gravel extraction on some of these jobs was part of the job to fix the problem, and it wasn't happening. They'd done everything else, but it wasn't happening. But it led to an erosion issue that is massive. So, I guess I'd like to think that we'll stop talking about their little segments and join some of that up to deal with the problem and have some data. So I like the living stream stuff. You come up with, we did this and here was the outcome, or you're dealing with real data, which is what I was talking about on what a dirty water is, because I think that was a bit of a revelation. Not many people realise 17 truckloads in there going downstream. Yes. So is that an approach that you would?
Through you, Chair, I think I'll let Lucy answer this one.
Yep.
She'll probably say what I was going to say.
Yeah, I think absolutely the answer is yes, and that's one of the key reasons why my team work closely with Simon and will continue to make sure that we're not looking where we don't need to, and we're not dealing with problems in a singular way. So that erosion control piece, both from the land to Simon's presentation and to the LUC classes work, stops it getting near the rivers in an ideal world, and then once it's in the rivers, it's my team to make sure. So we've got to connect those two dots up, otherwise we'll continue to be throwing good money after bad.
Finally,
I'll be quick. Simon, you indicated at the beginning that you had a pretty young complexion. Well,
It's the lights.
I'm just a little concerned about that. With your team, they're young, they're young, except for Craig. But Southland is privileged to have a man like you here to lead a team like what you've got and to set it out, plan it and make it work. So the target's on your back, we're watching.
I think that was a compliment.
It's a compliment. Take it. He does us all the time.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. We'll have a chat about that in the car on Friday.
So, can we?
I'll move that, the new recommendation.
Is everyone happy with the new recommendation?
Yes.
So you want to move it? You seconder, Lyndall, favour? Oh, sorry.
Speak to one aspect of that. I think one of the risks we have to be prepared to and anticipate is that when members of our community challenge us, if we move with this approach, there will be people who say, why are you attending to the beef and sheep farmers in your country? Our issue lies elsewhere in the minds of others. We would need to be really, really clear and be able to justify the focus that is being adopted in this plan. Some would will argue that it's an inappropriate focus, and we would have to anticipate that and be prepared to justify that, because in the minds of some, this will not attend to the nitrate issues that are challenging some of our rural water consumers. So I'm just flagging that as, but I'm not sure, do we at this stage endorse the report, or is it appropriate to go through the nitrate workshop that is scheduled for next month and understand what are the range of options available to us within that? At that point, I don't know, my sense is that maybe we're rushing at that endorsement process a little too quickly. But I would acknowledge that somehow we need to bring focus and prioritise, because we can't do everything across the entire region, and I appreciate that. So that was just a comment from Phil before we go to a vote on this one.
Yeah, and probably to add to that, we are funded through Thriving Southland, and they are doing things like the Aqua Group. I guess it is an integrated catchment management, and it's happy to take question.
Yeah, further to what Councillor Morrison has said there, there's no indication that we've mentioned beef and lamb or sheep and beef in this endorsement here, so I'm quite comfortable with that. But I would suggest, Simon, that there's quite a number of dairy farms on some of that rolling country, and in fact I can think of numerous areas where there are dairy farms here. So look, it's a whole of a catchment approach, so I'm certainly quite comfortable with what we've got to there.
I think the discussion is for us to have with this. It's not necessarily, I think we like the program, it's how we fund the program. It's the thing that's where we have to decide where the money comes from. Who can get paid for it, so to speak, and that's what I sort of indicated. But I like the program.
Through your chair, I mean, this program is still at a high level, regionally high level. There's quite a bit of detail to be sorted through. I think there's some scope to refine it further. I'm not trying to jump in here, John, but there's some scope to get into that detail around how might we use, how might we sort of move in and recognise the other issues we've got to that are broader.
Okay. So Ken, Morris, the Lyndall, then we'll probably just have to.
Right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I do think we should endorse this because there are three major contaminants in our waterways. One is nitrate, as you mentioned. The second is phosphorus, and the third is sediment. And this deals with the phosphorus and the sediment parts of that contaminant. And it's a very important thing to look after and manage. So I'm in favour of endorsing this report because it really gets to the heart of those two main contaminants, in my view.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I suggested we endorse it because to me, we're endorsing the fact that there is a 10-year plan at a high level, and that the priority outcomes that Simon's mentioned in numbers 1 to 7 sit well with us at a high level. That's why, because I think receiving the report doesn't necessarily give the team purchase to move ahead with the next steps of the detail. For me, it's about the fact that we've got a forward-looking 10-year plan that covers many aspects of the land sustainability team's work and their biodiversity work. So that's why I would be encouraging people to endorse it.
I'm happy to still move this.
Okay, Ken. Mover?
Yeah.
Seconder? Those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Simon. As you can see, you brought some direction to us, and that's what the community and council are looking for. So thank you very much.
Right, we will now have David come and do the operations delivery report, and then we'll probably break for a cup of tea before Lucy does the catchment liaison committees.
Strong coffee.
Thanks, Dave.
Good afternoon. Just in the same tone as the previous, I have got a couple of members that are with the Jules. Dave, Connor, most people would know. We've got Jolie and Catherine.
That's all my team here, but just, so all the hard questions, we will point to them. I'll take the report as read, but I might just highlight a couple of points. Got some very good feedback from staff about the attendance at the field days at Waimumu. They felt some of the conversations there were very good, and thank you for your support around that. Chilean fire creeper beetle we have released in a number of locations. We are still got a number of locations we would like to go, but that's quite a milestone for Environment Southland. Wild cottagers, we've managed to get our program done. Our program's not as big as it needs to be, but we have delivered the full program. We've got a period of weather in March, which was reasonably good, so we're pleased with that. Freshwater, we were pleased again. We've got a negative test on the eDNA, but we are waiting the results that come from Otago, our neighbours. And I think it does show the issue about biosecurity is it goes across boundaries. Doesn't actually know the difference between South and Otago, but from our point of view, very good result. In the marine area, you'll see that the Sabella, we believe that we have not found any more, and so we've eliminated it. However, that's not all the sort of good news, really. The part to actually prove that we have, we've got to go some ongoing monitoring for 5 years to show that it is eliminated. Appreciate it's in Otago, and so, you know, it's probably something again that's knocking on our door, again showing the importance, I think, from a biosecurity point of view of working with our neighbours and keeping vigilance on it. We've done a lot of work in the catchment area around fallen trees, and we've still got work to be done. And I think most of you will have evidenced that, even though it happened in October. We're still going through there, and that's been a significant amount of work and significant amount of expenditure in that area. Basically, there's a report, Steed Street Pump Station, there's a report will come up to your next council meeting. I don't believe there's any delegations to buy land. We are buying the pump station. It is all, everything else has happened. It's gone through the Reserves Act. We've got an agreement. It's a sale and purchase. We'll get a freehold, but I will have to bring a report to you, just giving you, or you giving the Chief Executive, I think, permission to just sign that sale and purchase agreement. Tiraroa Gates, you probably know more about it than I do, but again, some fairly extensive resource consent conditions, but we are acting on those and got them all underway and ticking over in that, and working, I think, very well with our partners on that one. So, Tranche 1, work has started on the Clifton West and removal of willows in there. We've got basically a draft program for Tranche 1 and Tranche 2 for Areti. We need to just put it through all our technical people, and then we are going to start talking to landowners and to catchment liaison committees, etc., council as well. And we're hoping we'll be in a place to do that maybe in 6 weeks' time, and that will enable us to get the program up and running. There are a number of the projects in there that will need consenting, and so it will enable us to get onto that consenting over the winter period so that we're ready to start it straight away in summer. Tranche 2, as you've seen there, we're still waiting for the completed signing of the loan agreement. My understanding is all the grant agreements have been signed and sent out to all the people. The loan agreements apparently have got to go up the tree a little bit further, so take a little bit longer. And there is some debate actually how they deal with GST converting a loan to a grant when it gets written off. And there's a debate in MB between finance and legal. So they just need to resolve that. We may get a supplementary agreement that we have to sign around GST, which if we get it, I will put it to the finance team to deal with it. But we are hoping that we may get the signed agreement by the end of this week, if not next week. But I have said that to you a number of times, and yeah, it's fortunately so. That's about the highlights of my report, and I'll probably open up to questions.
Yeah, thanks. I had one around, obviously, we've got a few things happening offshore at the moment, and that's going to put some big question marks around costs. What's our A for Tranche 1 with work currently happening for contractors? And I guess B, going forward, how's the funding model looking for dealing with the capability to absorb that?
The funding model is not looking good, I would say, because it's basically a flat line, really. You've put 2% in there for there. We have had contractors coming in wanting variations to some of their rates, and providing they can justify it and we're doing it. We're not in the business, I don't believe, of driving contractors under a fair price for a fair amount of work, but it is putting pressure on them at the moment, and it's happening very, very quickly. So at the moment, we're taking advice and we are potentially looking at variations of that. The main work is not necessarily the tranche 1, tranche 2 work, it's more our day-to-day stuff. Basically no one does any work for us without using machinery. So yeah.
So just add through, Chair. So normally each year in June we would seek costs from a number of local contractors to enable us to do the sort of hourly rate work. So that process will still be undertaken in about May, June. So we'll have more of an indication there when the impact of those forward-looking costs will likely be.
All of our contracts have a force majeure kind of contract in it, and I believe this is a thing that is beyond their control, beyond our control. We need the work to be done, so we also need a viable contracting business. So we are keeping an eye on it and keeping a finger on it, but we are also being, I think, reasonable.
Alistair.
David, GST, do we borrow the 18 million and then the GST comes on top of it? How does it work? Because we, as councillors, have to be very meticulous over this.
All of our estimates and rates are GST exclusive, so we put GST on top of it.
So you'll get
but then that will come back from the government as well.
Yep.
And so,
cash in.
and I think I think the issue is when they do the forgiveness clause, what happens to the GST that we've paid on that, because we've already paid it back. And should that go there and look, I'm sorry, I'm not a GST expert. I'm just thinking on what we need to do. I think it'll be neutral to us,
Yes.
but it just needs to be sorted out by the legal and financial people. It's interesting, they've had suspensory loans before and it's never been a problem, but all of a sudden it is.
David.
Yeah, David, the storm damage is just about every catchment. So when are we going to have a number for that? So
we were.
It's the budget, as Jeremy has highlighted, disaster damage, and it could come out of different funds, and it will be putting pressure on the budget.
It's a tricky one because we believe it's going to be in the order of excess of 500,000 is our latest estimate, but we have still got some work that we are doing on that. So I have asked my catchment managers to try and get me a reasonable estimate. We are looking and also talking to finances or anything under insurance. The problem is that the stuff that got damaged really is not an asset of ours in any shape or form. It's really trees that have fallen down over so whether it's covered by insurance or not. But it was a declared emergency. So is there emergency money that is available? So we are pulling everything we can together to make that as inclusive and exclusive as we possibly can, and then taking some advice.
Second one, if I may, on the pump station, is it actually operating yet? And secondly, I see there's a consent requirement to assess the effectiveness of fish-friendly pumps. I guess I'm wondering how in-depth is that and at what cost?
There's two things. Basically, yes, it is up and running, and as we can monitor it through. We still have got a number of items under maintenance with the contractor, and there's a couple of design issues that we want to take up with the designer. The fish monitoring, we have let that program, and the first stage of it is actually to define the monitoring program. We pretty much know what we want to do and how we're going to do it. Tell me here, David, if you I think it's 12 months to just show the effectiveness. As you can appreciate, we have got a bypass system for the long fin eels that go through, and so we're just going to have to see whether they, what are the numbers going through, and they're a seasonal run, aren't they, David?
Yeah, so it's migrating
tuna, so that'll start in April, sort of mid to late April. So we do have a provider for that. We've built big long nets to go on the outlet pipes to catch them and to have a look and to see whether they're damaged or not, that kind of thing.
So the bypass thing, you'll see.
Now the bypass is for inward fish passage. We're talking about outward fish passage once I've gone through
They tell us they can pass a cow through those screws, so I haven't tried it. But
Well, I fitted, so there you go. Cow or not.
yeah, anyone want to ride? It could become an amusement park.
Thank you, Lyndall.
Oh, funnily enough. Just on that, actually, did we have a baseline measure prior to the installation of the new?
Not in terms of migrating through the system. There was some work done around what was present in the drainage system.
Okay, that wasn't my actual question.
I would suggest to you that it would be very, very unlikely that a eel would pass through the old pump station live.
Yes.
Just the mechanics of it, really.
Yes. Thank you. Couple of things. You mentioned that in the Invercargill section that you needed to meet with the ICC about the further tree removal on the Waihokai. Has that happened yet?
Through Mr. Chair, no, we're working through that with ICC. Yes, you're correct. We are having an on-site meeting with them, and that's the stop bank in Queen's Drive on and that'll be the true right bank. There's quite a bit of encroachment there from some of them.
Cool, thank you. It clarifies the space. Just as a not completely facetious, are you aware of the Utrecht city in the Netherlands that has a fish doorbell? Just as far as monitoring or letting fish through, and I'm thinking about the Tijera gates, etc. In season, they have a camera, and live people can watch the live stream of the gate that they have, and if they see a fish, they press the digital doorbell, and it opens the gateway, and the fish can come or go as they see fit. So, you know, I guess what I'm saying is that there's technology that might help with some of these things, and I promise I don't spend all my days watching an underwater gate in Utrecht and ringing the doorbell for the fish. But well, you know, we've got monitoring cameras. It's not completely, you know, I'm not being completely facetious actually.
It's an interesting.
Let's think outside the square to solve some of our issues. The opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. One was about the terminology used for cleaning the lower Waituna Channel and Duck Creek. Somebody from Forest and Bird might have a dispute with the word cleaning. I know it's something that we use a lot over the time, but actually it is also the destruction of native fish habitat. So I wonder if we could, in future, Mr. Chairman, use a different terminology, such as removing accumulated fine sediment and excessive weeds, or something like that, because some people who don't know much about this might think that cleaning is a good thing, but it does have its adverse effects as well. And on the matter of Te Aroha Gate, so it's very good to see that the slots being put in to allow fish passage. So I'd imagine there'll be some kind of monitoring program there as well, like you have at the Stead Street.
Those are both underway. We've got two sections to it, the normal one and then a special one around species of cultural significance. And we've let both contracts are in the process. Again, because of a cyclic, it happens at certain times of the year, don't actually think they're physically down there monitoring at this point in time.
Right, thank you.
Just, you're looking for a response around the Waituna cleaning? Because we did see the photos and pretty hard to argue it wasn't cleaning. the volume that came out after
Oh, yeah,
years.
yeah. But, this relates to Rule 78 of the plan, which we've had some problems with in the past. So that's important that, it is done so that the fine sediment and excessive weed is removed and that other aspects such as well, as, the right proportions of that are taken out and most of it's left there. So, I'm not really asking for anything, just making a
Make a
note.
note.
I guess as someone that attended that liaison meeting, there was also quite a bit made around how it hadn't been cleaned out for 8 years. And that significant build-up, so if you cleaned it more often, there'd be less to take out, a lot less.
And it's the use of the word cleaned, Mr. Chairman, that's the problem.
Can we take note now for consideration and come back?
Certainly, look, we are removing fine sediments and weeds, there's no doubt about it. You can see what's on there. We do have spotters, so that in actual fact, any wildlife that we do identify, there is a spotter there. Sometimes that's hard to see. But so, it's a two-person operation. So we try and try and put back all those, any wildlife that we do find. Some harder than others. When you do take out a big chunk of weed, sometimes you do miss things, there's no doubt about that. But they certainly put a lot back. And certainly when we come to clean, ideally, David, we could have the budget to clean every 2 years, and it would be, but we just don't have that kind of budget. So unfortunately, it's a cyclic thing, but a very, very important stream from the drainage consideration of the Waituna area. It's the bottom end of the catchment that doesn't work. The rest of it doesn't work either. So,
Yes, I know that, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, that I know that it has to be done for drainage maintenance.
Yeah.
But
You just look at the terminology.
it also, it's very destructive on native fish habitat. So maybe what Dave says about having a spotter to throw fish back and kakahi and mussels and things, where that's possible. And somebody else reading this, might think, we're just destroyers of the environment, and they need to know that it's important for drainage for those areas, but it's also done in a way that minimises the impact possible.
So Jason, maybe we just
and certainly the words there reflect what we're trying to do, Mr. Chairman. So I don't have any problems with what you're suggesting, the way of words.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Ewan, you had a question.
I just to the point, I was at Waituna liaison meeting as well, and you suggest that if we're going to be repatriating some of that wildlife, then more frequent cleaning would be quite beneficial. It would make the job a hell of a lot easier. So from what I've seen. But I suppose the point I was going to make, David, was around the meeting our contractors around cost increases. And so we've a lot of businesses are now operate or have for the last, did through COVID, fuel surcharge, whatever that happens to look like. So we've had conversations with their suppliers, and they're talking about, having an understanding of their fuel costs for that particular period of time and what that additional cost means, rather than actually coming back with an yearly cost increase, so to speak. So I suppose it's a more managed process from both ends of the operations, so to speak. Whether that can be done from a logistical point of view, I'm not sure, but
it could be. The issue that we do is we principally do a lot on an hourly rate basis, and so if they can give us a justification why the hourly rate should, and I'll make it up here, go from $150 to $160, because that's the amount of additional fuel, and they've given the, I've got a digger, it's a 23 tonner, it uses, 10 litres an hour, and that's the addition. And here's the thing, from our point of view, I think from an accounting point of view, it's easier for us to add into an hourly rate, rather than at the end of the year then do a reconciliation of additional fuel use. But we would be open to anything that was easier for that business to do if they felt it was better. I'm just thinking from our end, it's probably easier just to have an hourly rate, and then I know, Lucy's contracting company's done 500 hours, and
So we do less hours. I'm sorry.
Sorry, through chairs, a little bit horses for courses though as well, in terms of the maintenance work and the river works budgets, which are, to David and DC's point as well around those kind of smaller value hourly rate contractors that we kind of do an annual kind of get the prices in, and then we've got them on the books. As opposed to our Kanoa projects, big capital investment stuff, that's got a slightly different, we need to approach that slightly differently because of the way we're packaging up those pieces of work. So in both cases, we need to be dealing with our contractors in an appropriate way, but we also need to make sure we aren't kind of hitting our contingency buckets too hard in terms of those larger capital projects. So it's trying to be balanced between both.
Just coming back to your question, yes, we will be managing the budget to try and keep within our budget constraint. We are lucky that it is the end of the season, so the most of the work's already been done. But it may mean that there will be some work that won't get done just because we don't have the budget to do it.
Also worth noting that this isn't just our riverworks impacts. So our biosecurity work program, the marine programs, all of that uses fuel in various different kinds. So we're looking at it across the whole piece, not just in regards to it.
I just look, probably haven't told Catherine this, but just the bringing our divers down for some of our work in the marine area, the airfares of bringing them into Southland has gone up quite significantly. Sort of I was averaging about $700, now I'm averaging $1,100. So, and we're booking the same amount out in advance, so that just gives you a bit of an idea. And I think that's a mixture of two things, probably one, less flights into Southland, and two, the additional fuel costs. So there are implications right across the board of various things.
Right, thank you, David. Can we?
I have a question I've been indicating.
Oh, sorry,
I had quite a few questions, but just regarding the solutions for the damaged flood bank in the lower river at the Tuawe Bay. We've got the YL Catchment liaison coming up on Friday, so hopefully that information is going to be taken through there and captured and shared with all of the members of the committee and also people visiting.
Unfortunately, I aren't able to make the YL, but our team will put together something. There is a report that's been done that is in public domain on the lower whale. Basically, I believe it would need to be a decision of council whether we proceed with that work. So I wouldn't be able to go there, or I don't think we'd be able to go there and say this is going to happen or that's going to happen, because I think it's a decision of council how you fund it.
Okay, just these solutions for the damaged flood bank are being worked through. So if it's not, if it's not, then we shouldn't really have that. Also, with regards to the facility, the gravel build up on the Manawai boat ramp, you know, we've got here, we're working with other organisations to facilitate the outcome of that below the Pioneer Energy Powerhouse at Waiau Conference. That river access is quite important, and I don't know what's changed. I don't know what's changed, but ultimately, at the end of the day, it could be through lower flows in the Waiau, higher flows out of the Manawai, it could be a whole raft of things. But what's our role in that to facilitate the organisations in making sure that that's open and freely available for users, including us, for surveying and everything else? Are we just facilitating a consent part of it, or are we assisting in a reason why it's happening?
We're getting public wanting us to do something about it. It's clearly an asset sitting on Southland District Council's books. It's in their asset management plan, and they actually have the ability, because it's a structure of theirs, to go in there without a consent to shift that gravel. And so what we're trying to do is facilitate a solution. The Southland District, they just need a digger there to actually dig a little bit of the gravel away. I can't do it. I would have to get a consent to do it because it's not one of our structures. When I say Environment Southland doesn't have a right to go and do, but they could do it immediately if they wish to. And so what we are trying to facilitate is, how's the easiest way? We haven't, as far as I know.
It just says here we're working with other organisations to facilitate an outcome.
Cool.
So other organisations would be, we were mentioning it to Southland District Council, get them onto it, because it's an issue that's reared its head lately, and I'm not sure why. And it hasn't been an issue before. So is it an issue through inactive district council, or is it an issue through low flow?
I haven't I don't know what the history of cleaning it is from their point of view, and we haven't done any analysis of gravel flow and what's caused that gravel flow. All we know is we're getting a number of users are saying we can't use it because it's got a gravel bar blocking the way. Basically, we believe it's clearly owned by Southern District Council. They have got the ability to clean it tomorrow without a consent or whatever. So we're trying to get them on to doing that.
Thank you for that, Dave. Just one other thing, just going to the Catchment Liaison Committee, there's been a fair bit of talk regarding the true left part of the whale. Now it's really badly weeding and silting up now. There's a lot of lack of flow. There's fish habitat, I'm not sure if you've heard much, Councillor Hodgson, but it has changed over the last couple of years. So it may be an idea that we just look a wee bit into that prior to, but at least understand that that may be coming in the next.
We'll have a look at it. It hasn't come up onto my desk at all, but we have been looking at a bit of the gravel issues around the bottom of the whale. So we didn't ask that study to go that far, but we'll see what we've got. But we'll be, yeah, so at least we'll know what we're doing and if we're not doing anything.
So for a very long river, you've got a boat ramp at Molloway, boat ramp to Tapri, you can do beach access at Clifton, and a boat ramp at the Whale Mouth down Fishing Camp Road, which is, under what I understand, is unusable. So, thank you.
Okay.
I'll make the recommendation.
Second. David. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, for a cup of coffee. 10 minutes, sharp. Oh, sorry, Mayor, move it.
Oh, I'll move that we fish Dorwell. No, we
Stop.
right, adjourn.
Jeremy. Jeremy, see you in 10 sharp.
Oh, yeah. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I figured it was just.
Oh, yeah, yeah, well, I thought we had a
Great strategy. It's good to see them finish up. Open the meeting
We're
again.
not talking about scones.
Right, we'll back along, guys. Right, I'll hand over to Lucy, please.
Just a brief update through you, Chair, on the progress of the Catchment Liaison Committee's annual general meetings. So you'll see from the paper, we've had 3 of our meetings already. So we had the Matola yesterday and 2 last week, Matharu and Waituna. All so far being well attended and positive conversations playing out with the CLC members and lots of actions and good conversations happening. So we've got the YR one is happening on Friday this week, and then Oriti next Monday before Easter. The remaining 3 are we've got tentative dates for the Waimatuku and for the Aparima. We're just trying to confirm venues, and Tianao is likely to be mid to late April, and we're just liaising with the chair there to get all of that teed away. But I just wanted to table the report today so that you've all got visibility of those dates. If you are intending to come along to some or all of them. So we will keep keeping you posted as the more dates get settled in.
Yep, and great, thank you. And can we maybe, if there's any conversation we had about these, we leave them till the next ICM when we've completed all AGMs, please. Thank you very much. If we could have Jerry remove the. Paul second. Favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried, thank you. Right, biosecurity strategy, Rebecca. Thank you.
Whilst Rebecca's coming up to the table, yes. Chair. So you'll remember that from the end of last calendar year, we tabled our annual report on our biosecurity work programme, and Council at that time flagged that the biosecurity strategy hadn't been reviewed in last year's timeline. So the staff have been working really speedily to present you with a draft strategy today. So I won't step on Rebecca's toes at all. I'll let Rebecca talk to it. But this Rebecca, has everybody met Rebecca before? Yes? Okay, cool. I wasn't sure if we had or not. This is Rebecca. She's our Principal Biosecurity Officer. So Rebecca.
Thank you.
So, like Lucy said, like it's not just me, it's the staff. Yeah, Catherine and Jolie are here as well. But yeah, so we've all been working with that with some support from market consulting. So really, so the purpose of the biosecurity strategy is to help sort of spell out how we take the leadership role in biosecurity for the region. So that's what we're mandated to do under the Biosecurity Act. And it covers how we want to manage harmful species. So that includes pests that will be in our RPMP, and also other harmful species that we might take a non-regulatory approach with. And I guess what we really took the old strategy and took out a whole lot of stuff that we thought just didn't add to the clarity of the message that we're wanting to deliver. And then, as mentioned in the report, so the key things around strengthening references to collaboration, data and surveillance capabilities, science and innovation, and then the integrated planning across terrestrial, freshwater and marine environments. Working, I guess across, trying to break down those silos, working across council, we're having other groups recognise how they're supporting biosecurity work. There's also quite a focus at the moment of interregional alignment. So that's reflected within the strategy document. So this, as I said, has been worked on by the staff. It's now with you for comment. Also ready to go to Te Marama as partners. Any questions sort of on that purpose?
Very good report, thank you. Love the pictures. Especially the legs together under the hedge, eh?
Oh, we thought of taking it.
And I'm trying to pick the faces on the exporter. Like Pete and a few others. So it just goes to show in the report there's a lot of action out there and a lot of actually other ministries sort of assisting in health as well. So great, good report, thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm happy to move.
Well, just one, Mr. Chairman. Sort of an overall one relating to climate change and the invasion of species, if invasion is the right word, of species that are found normally in warmer climates and now starting to come down here. It's a marine and terrestrial issue. I see you've got maybe other references to this, but it's really it's fairly vague unless there's something that I've missed, which is possible. On page 6 of the document, or page 41, the last one says respond to a rising national regional issues using tools and networks available. But I wonder if there's a something we could do more collectively to keep an eye out and sort of anticipate what might happen and take action before it happens so that we don't have a problem in the future. Is that something you think about?
Yeah, so definitely part of the work that we're doing. So as part of the regional pest management review, we've got access to some modelling data from across the country to start looking at that, but also that's where a real key focus of the more non-regulatory stuff is, so organisms of interest and things that we've flagged as potentially upcoming problems where we might be spending a bit of time trying to figure out where they are, what sort of damage they might be doing, how they might change. So it is something that we are looking at. The terrestrial space, I think we've got really good data and the science is there. Marine, perhaps a little bit more difficult to understand what those impacts will be.
We had the situation with the yellow-legged hornet in Auckland last year. There was a big effort put in to try and stop them from getting established. Would we have the resources to do that here if something like that happened? We discovered something that could explode and be a real problem if we didn't, there was obviously quite a lot of time and effort put into that project.
It depends what the organism is. So that the yellow-legged hornet is being led by MPI, so they're still going. So they're still putting in a lot of work. I believe they draw on resource from like the CRIs and possibly the council, but I mean, in that case, it's really at that national level where that resourcing sits. We've responded to, I guess, the Sabella, the recent one. So, it depends what it is and what resourcing is required and then what level of support we would get.
I think there's some.
Yeah, Catherine, Jolie, do you guys want to come up just because questions around like what your work programs are currently grappling with in terms of the climate change piece and also the response stuff? You've had both from a pest plant perspective and from a marine perspective. We've had a little bit of experience in this in the last wee while, so I know the topic for today is mostly the strategy, but we were hoping that it might garner some further discussion about the broader program. So did either of you want to jump in on Councillor Rockway's question there in regards to the climate change implications regarding pests or the marine response stuff?
Yes, I think Rebecca kind of covered the modelling that we're kind of doing, but yeah, Catherine and I were just kind of discussing in regards to an incursion. It kind of depends on the priority and how big a project it is, but years ago when velvet leaf was an issue, it was an NPI-led program, but resources from across Southland were pulled in, and because it was such a high priority, other projects came in and supported the work that was done, so it would depend on the scale of it, but yeah.
I guess a question Mr. Chairman I was trying to ask was, does the plan here enable you to do that without having to come back to us and say, oh no, we've got this problem, can we have enough resources to do it? Ideally, the plan should enable you to do something like that if you call it's going to need those sorts of resources. So does the plan allow you to do that?
I might take that one quickly. Just, I would say that it doesn't do it alone. The strategy is a really core piece, and to Rebecca's introduction, it's something that you signalled that you would like us to review, and we've stripped out some of that weight of it, but it leans into all of those other documents that give us and enable our activities. So from a Fjorden perspective, talk to all of that, but there's the Fjorden pathway plan, there's the work for the RPMP, and there's other elements that manage and operationalise the team's work. So the strategy alone doesn't do that, but the operational documentation that sits underneath it and the supporting frameworks that we've got gives us the full picture. But happy to be corrected or challenged.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
We might be back in the LTP to talk about this more though.
I've got questions. I've got questions. I saw to you and Jeremy, Lyndall, and Roger.
Guys, pre-Christmas you presented around some of the work that you're doing, and one of those work streams is around avian bird flu and the associated risk. And so I suppose, and you talked about partnering with other, MPI and other government organisations. So I suppose thinking about the complexity that you face, and Morris's point with the strategy, if we're looking at it for argument's sake, avian bird flu, our coastal regions are home or inhabited at times by a lot of migratory birds of different species, or different species. So how does this, do you think the strategy around, or part of the strategy around educating the community around the risks that are out there and associated, how they can actually help to manage that, is pertinent? Is it, have you got enough in place, do you feel?
So I was going through it. So we don't see the avian influenza as a real biosecurity response. So MPI has taken the regional councils, tasked them to create sort of response plans and do some of that comms work, but it's because we hold those relationships with the territorial authorities, the Runaka, and some of those community groups. So it's not going to be a biosecurity response, but it is about getting that comms messaging out there, keeping people safe. And so it's having those relationships. So it's one of those key objectives in here around connecting people. And so while we're not going to respond with biosecurity measures, we do have those connections, and that's what puts us in a really good place. Sorry,
I probably didn't explain myself very well, Rebecca. So thinking of the rivers and estuary, so there's a number of species, migratory species there that frequent over the summer. So I suppose linking that education back to community around how, and there's a number of people in the community that are, watching, photographing, taking part or interacting with those species. So how do we make sure that those segments of the community are actually up to speed with actually understanding what they might be looking for and helping that response framework get underway?
Yes, I think we're at the point where consultants are being contracted for the different regions to start rolling out those comms plans and templates.
Okay.
So it's being administered through regional bodies, and Dave is the one who is running that. So yeah.
So it sits in the strategy. So.
Yeah. So I think again, it's around us having those relationships. That's really key for that.
Through you, Chair, that there was a lot of exercise. There's been a couple of exercises, HPIA exercises, which are multi-agency sessions, and Dave Burgess from our team has been involved in all of those and kind of bringing those back and forwards to make sure that roles and responsibilities are really clear about what's MPI holding, what are we holding. I think your point there around how do we communicate the risks of all of these pests, to use a term that I'm trying not to look at my own team about, they're not all pests, but like the how do we communicate the risk of an increase and changing profile of these kinds of species is critical to the work of all of the biosecurity teams. That's how we communicate. It's the work ambassadors helping with in Catherine's team. It's a lot of what Jolie and the team do with the plant identification information, you know, making sure we've got those pieces of collateral and that we're leaning into other parts of our business to be able to tell people what they need to be looking out for. Because we're kind of ambulance at the bottom of the cliff once a thing's here sometimes, and you want to get ahead of that so that you're able to get people self-identifying, so it's not Jolie driving down the street and spotting a thing and having to swoop in and do a thing. So we like that too, just to be clear.
Good. Thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, I was just going to mention that we actually had on Monday a biosecurity deliberation Zoom meeting with the chairs for South Island, and so we did talk about it and trying to work out a lot around this, trying to work out how this cross-border stuff. Our problems don't stop at the borders. So it's hugely important to work with these other councils. So Canterbury, Otago, West Coast, we're there. Certainly, especially around, you know, trying to, I was just looking at my notes here. Obviously, the funding's a huge one, and we need to be always talking as one voice to the government, especially in Wilding Pines was a classic in regards to that. One thing that, you know, I suppose it was my thoughts on regards, sometimes I know we always hear the odd wallaby coming down this direction, things like that, but maybe, you know, in the future, I think we need maybe as South Island, we are an island, that the funds, the problem might not be here, but it'll be somewhere in another province. And should we actually be, you know, effectively funding some of their to deal with it where it is, rather than be, oh, we'll deal with it when it gets here, and actually be proactive in some of this stuff. And some might not like thinking like that, but it is. If it's a South Island problem, it's everyone's problem. Someone's got it. So whether we need to, you know, start thinking like that and challenging the system, but then also work with the government, saying we're all working together. We're all trying to get the funds for them from the government too. So it was a good discussion, and we certainly sent the staff, people involved to certainly challenge the system and have a good look at it, and certainly work together in regards to this too. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of things. Firstly, thank you for less words is more. Thank you. The outcomes, many of which are quite hard to measure in a numerical fashion, I suppose, but I'm assuming that will come through to us through that LTP process. How we actually are going to measure some of those outcomes and how effective the work has been, assuming that I've got that right.
So can I jump in just whilst on that one? So it will weave into our delivery, our ops delivery plans. And so the team have been working with Helen, who's helped pull this together, to make sure that we've got rolling reporting that can be continually kind of updated, so that you'll see the two things kind of be brought together. Yeah.
Two other things. In my brain, biodiversity and biosecurity are quite closely linked, and to Councillor Hodson's point earlier about the fund that for establishing biodiversity programs. What conversations are you having across your divisions so that that is an interlinked piece of work?
I mean, yes, ongoing conversations, but so I did get a question about how we measure our biodiversity impacts through biodiversity impacts through biosecurity management analysis. So we do need to up their game there and continue those conversations. But again, a lot of what happens in those biodiversity projects is helping to manage some really widespread pests that we wouldn't, species that we wouldn't sort of be doing a lot with otherwise. So I think it's just recognising that and being able to tell a consistent story across the week. So.
Okay. And one last thing, given that you might have made some changes to the strategy at surface level, is there anything that comes to mind immediately about policy settings that governance might need to be aware of. As opposed to making any tweaks or changes to policy settings to support the strategy.
That I'm sort of aware of, but I think this is what we take into account as we do the plan reviews that are already sort of starting to kick off. So this will be a guiding document for those. So the changes will come.
Yeah, so there's nothing major immediately that needs policy reset or.
Through you, Chair, I'd just say, so the strategy is a missing piece we were due to review. We didn't review. It needs to sit at that higher level, but to Rebecca's answer, we've got the Yordan Pathway Plan underway in its review. We've got the RPMPV review. So those things need a strategic document to refer back up to. And it's been missing, but we've had those other pieces going. So it's kind of done two things. Yeah, it's done the national level look and making sure that we're setting up for the future so that those things have a nest.
Thank you. I've got Roger, David, and Phil. Questions.
Oh, thanks, Chair. This is a short question, but should the strategy have a longer tenure? 5 years currently, but likely to be an ongoing. What's the balance?
Question. I would say that it's a draft, and so if you wanted it to have a longer tenure, we can certainly consider that. Give feedback. Is there a legislative reason why it's 5?
No, and also be aligned better with some of the plan reviews.
Yeah.
And then there's.
Is that something we want an answer to before it comes back? Thank you. David.
Yeah, look, it's a bit of a okay over what happened previously. I guess you talked about working with NPI and stuff. So it's around overwork legal when it came into the courts. It was a massive hit. And we were all there scrambling. Their pastures were in disarray and took out their natural way of getting nitrogen. All the clover pastures got decimated. It was really good to see within a short time there was a wasp that could be put out there. You could come and get them, and we all worked together and made such a massive difference. And as long as you have the ability to pivot to something that's got a massive economic impact, because it's such a small insect that cost us tens of thousands of dollars each. It's massive. So, well done for how that was done. As long as that, that's that working together thing. That's how important it is. And it worked really well. So, action on the ground is always great to see, and I take it's a name the strategy. That's where you judged really, and it was a good outcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just reflecting on the fact we're sitting here in an integrated catchment management committee meeting, and we're talking about biosecurity, and clearly there's this connection, which I think in the strategy might be understated in terms of how biosecurity contributes to and supports integrated catchment management. So I'm just wondering if there was an opportunity to add one additional sentence at the bottom of the section on alignment on page 4. And it could potentially be something along the line, as regional integrated catchment management approaches evolve and mature, there will be increasing opportunity to align biosecurity actions with catchment level outcomes. And I guess what this is doing is not only stating where the existing alignment lies, but also that in the future, as we revise it and update it, we might be in a better position to connect catchment level outcomes through the ICM approach with the biodiversity, with the biosecurity strategy. I'm not sure of how others feel about that, perhaps adding that additional sentence in under the tail end of the alignment section, but I'm just wondering if that would offer a flag that in the future there will be convergence, perhaps, as the ICM approach evolves.
Could they bring that back with the rest of it, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah. With that.
Just a suggestion for consideration. I'm happy to offer a suggested text.
Yeah.
People comfortable with that?
I do.
Through you, Chair, what we'll do with any comments that anybody has that are detailed beyond today, if you send them through, we will put those together and bring it back for the next meeting for your consideration, a final version, so that you're able to see it, and we'll have the reporting, first load of reporting. Yeah.
Jeremy, your question.
Just quickly, I was just going to say, is this aligned with no target? You know, as in, our strategy is the same because we have consistent issues. Is that reasonable to say? I don't know.
I haven't done a sort of deep dive into comparing each of the two strategies, but following comments from here, we also would like to take it to the South Island councils for their input and review, so getting their feedback as well, so that we can reach that alignment.
That's, I was just sort of browsing through it again, just trying to find where we were working with other councils and there was an outcome there. One of them, but I'm wondering whether we should be doing more. Just in, you look at the map and you go, there's a huge border there. We should be looking after each other, but in regards to that, it just doesn't stop at a border, and that's why I say you should have strategies that similar.
Examples around wild trees.
Yeah.
So good examples we can highlight.
Yeah, I just say,
Especially the Catlands, right? You know, areas, large areas that aren't farmed that are touching each other.
But also the focus isn't just on the terrestrial too, so you know the vast amount of fjordland requires the cross-boundary, cross-country approach that Catherine and her team take, so yeah, there's a bit more detail.
So
Suggestion though.
can we receive that report, please? Jeremy, second, Jeff, over. Thank you very much, team.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Right, asset management update. Stephanie and Tim, please.
Hi.
Yes.
So through you, Chair, so some of you will have met Stephanie before. Stephanie Gray's our team leader in the technical and design part of my group. Some of you have already met Tim Connell. He's our new technical and design catchment manager. And today Stephanie's going to talk to you about her favourite topic, which is asset management. We had intended to do a induction style asset management briefing for yourselves, and after talking with the chair, we thought it was useful to do it in public. There's a lot of interesting things happening in this part of my team, and a lot of interest from yourselves in regards to how we do our asset management work. So this isn't the only time you are going to be hearing about all things asset management. I will, after we get through the conversation today, we'll figure out what kind of cadence you want, but I'm sure Steph would be keen as beans to come back regular and provide you with updates on how our work programme in the asset management space is advancing. You'll all know Jimmy as well, sitting down the back, who was in the ops delivery function previously. He is now in our technical catchment design team with Steph and with Tim as well, so crucial assets, making sure that we're across the two pieces. So that's how the team is working at the moment. So I wasn't going to talk for long other than just to set the scene for Tim and for Steph. But yeah, just this is pitched at an induction type style session. So lots of questions will be welcomed, and we'll take it nice and steady, but we'll be back and talk to you more about it in future as well.
So yeah, this is just Steph's just going to give you a brief background into asset management before we sort of discuss what's happening in our space and how we're going to transition from reactive maintenance into a more whole of catchment approach to dealing with our renewals and maintenance.
Well, thank you both for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lucy said, asset management, that's our deep passion of mine. So I'm very much looking forward to the next 20 minutes or so we've got here. Up on the screen, just looking at the key things, hoping to cover today, acknowledging that it's very much at that introductory level. There's a lot more detail behind these slides you'll see. So take comfort that those will be shared over hopefully coming workshops. To start off with a wee bit of an overview, some of you may have seen this slide before with our assets. A large portion of our asset portfolio is made up of our floodplains, so we've got 517 kilometres of those. There's also dams, tie-gates, bridges, and many culverts throughout the catchments as well. Behind what we do, there's three levels, of standards that we're working towards. There's the international standards for asset management. That's largely covering, what we need to be doing. That next step down is the International Infrastructure Management Manual, usually referred to as a IIMM. That's detailing how we should be doing it. So that's not specific to flood protection, that's all asset classes, but it still provides a really useful foundation on how we need to be tackling some of these things. In more of a New Zealand context, we've got the Apollo Guide, so that's like a New Zealand organisation that looks at asset management across all of its different functions, but then applies the New Zealand context to it. So in conjunction with that, and also the Flood Protection Asset Performance Assessment Code of Practice, that's looking at how we need to be assessing our assets, considering risk and performance and factors like that. At a more, local level, looking within our council context, this is where a bit of a hierarchy of the documents that we currently have or are hoping to have in the foreseeable future. So looking at that upper level, sitting at the strategic outcomes, our vision and goals as a council and what that looks like in an asset management context, working down to an asset management policy, which will hopefully make its way to council in the next month or two. Our strategic asset management plan is something on the list for the next 12 months. Our asset management plans, so it's a series of documents that we've had for the last few decades, but they're currently outdated. So this coming LTP, we'll be looking at reviewing those and actually combining them into one document as they currently sit in separate catchment ones. And then we've got our operational plans, which we're more familiar with for catchment operations delivery. And that's how it kind of all feeds down. Key definitions. I thought today would be a good chance to go over some key terms that we've used, especially over the last 5 years. There's been a lot of focus around defects. That was a big talking point, I guess, in the last LTP and how we communicated our progress and our work programs. So just like to take some time to run through these. You'll notice up the top, condition and serviceability. So condition, serviceability, and our defect data, that's what we collect in our annual or quarterly inspections. So with the condition grading, when we're talking about that, we're looking at usually a kilometre segment of the bank, and we're seeing, visually assessing it to, does that look like its design profile? If it's been designed to have a 2-to-1 batter and a 3.5 metre crest, is it consistent with that, or has that changed over time? And then we'll be grading that accordingly. The serviceability, that one's quite closely linked to the defects. So that's how, in the event of a flood, how will that perform? So it's designed to perform, to offer a level of service, say 1 in 100 year level of protection. Are there defects on that that are going to prevent that from happening? Then the last one that we've kind of got added in the last 18 months, I guess, is a consequence rating. So still looking at that kilometre segment stretch of a bank, but acknowledging what that bank actually protecting. Is it productive farmland? Is it critical lifelines? Is it residential areas? The two next ones, the priority ratings and the defect status. The priority ratings has been a lot of talk around defect priorities and how we're tracking with those. So just to clear that up from our perspective, when we're going through the ranking process and programming defects for repair, the priority is the initial rating that we give. So if we go out in the field and we assess a defect, and that's an indicator to the work supervisors who are creating those work programs on what that initial assessment might be. So priority 1 being high priority, they feel like that needs to be dealt with in the foreseeable future. When we get that information back in-house, then we assign the defect status. So say for the like priority one, the high defects, you might have maybe 20 of those, but there isn't the budget to complete all of that within this year. So that's where the defect status comes in. If you planned year 1 to 3 and then future works, some of that might have to be spread out over multiple years. So I guess one of the changes that you'll be seeing over the next 12 months and beyond is we're looking to shift away from a predominantly defect basis of reporting and then looking at that wider segment data with the condition, serviceability and consequence. So the defect data is still very much there, but it's more sitting under that serviceability banner, so we can make sure that we're actually making fully informed decisions as opposed to just focusing on one way section. Is there anything you had to add to that, Lucy?
Yeah, so through Chair, just that, so we've had some questions about this over the last few months, and we continue to get questions as we did yesterday at the Matoda Catchment Liaison Committee. So as the pictures on the slide there show, there's point defects. So when the team have been going out and doing inspections, they've been logging on their devices, we've got a hole, we've got a tree, we've got a, what kind of defect it is. What Stefan is just talking about is a shift to a more stretching the segments out so that we're able to deal with more than one defect at a time, or think about one defect at a time. We're stretching it out to a kilometre, half a kilometre, dependent on the segments. So this is different from what we've been doing in the past, but it's part of our ongoing asset maturity improvements. So we're just flagging with you that information sits behind, it will still sit behind those dots on the maps, but we're looking at the work program in a slightly different way in terms of how do we do stretches. So the question we were asked yesterday at the Catchment Liaison Committee was, is it one or the other? And the answer that I gave is it's both. Currently, both. We're still working with individual defects as well as stretches, and that's the case. What Steph's talking about is how we will continue to evolve that process as we go and as we do know more about our assets. Just trying to get really clear with you about the language that we are using.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, you're going to deal with them in kilometre stretches and look at sort of some defects as opposed to point ones. The point ones really matter if it's all of a sudden a low spot when you get a flood and it pours over. So just saying. I mean, it's, this is the balance that you've got to have. And
that's the consequence part of this. Yeah. So you look at the consequence and what's the impact going forward. Right. And then it's more of a data targeted approach rather than just reactive. So we're looking at the whole picture rather than just one point in time. So that point in time might be critical, so we do deal with it straight away. Right. Or it might not be, and we can deal with it at a later time as a bigger picture.
I think to add to Tim's point there, the defect data, that's really important, and that's, at the end of the day, that's the basis of the work we are doing. But we wanted to make sure, if we have, say, over a kilometre section of bank, there might be 3 defects, that we're not going out just to repair those 3 defects, we're actually looking at what's between. And if we're already on site with contractors, is it more cost efficient, and to prevent further defects being created in the future, can we actually take that chance to remediate that bank while we're there? So instead of just dealing with a specific tree or a hole, looking at that full bank. And one of the things that Jimmy's been doing a lot of work on is looking at re-fencing plans. So how do we actually graze stop banks in a better fashion to prevent those defects from happening in the first place, if possible?
I'm going to have a follow-up just as a so the critical, we used to have this thing that was one end to the other full of defects, and it made no sense because you're lost in the fog. So the really critical ones that you mentioned around consequence, whatever, it would be great to track those, because you talked about we might have the budget to fix, and so you're going to have to highly prioritise. But surely the things that could lead to a breach have to be dealt with really soon. I think it was with 12 months. But we have to have some sort of matrix so we understand how many of those there were and when they're going to be dealt to, just to give some surety that they're being dealt to, rather than they're just lost in all the defects. So
that's what we're working towards. I mean, we've got a long journey to go to get to the right level, but we are working towards that sort of approach where we've got full transparency on what we're doing.
I'm very worse than them, though, so that the things that are going to lead to a breach, that you've got a really good handle on that when it's going to happen, and you're going to deal with the others when you're doing other work. That's the bit that I'm so focused on it.
No, it will be a priorities list that you can track, and you can see why
and there'll be a rationale why we've picked it, or why it's there, and what action we're going to take, and they'll come from this.
And one of the things that we're building and that the council investment through the last LTP enables us to build is this team to enable us to improve our asset management understanding so that we've got better plans in place and you've got better visibility over how we're managing the defects, the low points, the criticality, etc. So to Tim's point, it is a journey that we're on. We're starting from a fairly low base of understanding with the points, all those dots that you talked about where you get kind of lost in the fog. That was the best that we could do at that point in time. Now we're evolving it into a more mature space in terms of how we actually manage on bigger stretches so that we're so it's an evolution of a thing. It's not those dots will still exist. We still know that they're there, and the team will keep continuing to look at those as they go back for further inspections. So it will build the foundation. That's the foundation where we're moving to now.
Thank you, Roger.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I was just wondering if you could clarify for us the frequency of inspections that some are taken.
Yeah, so at the moment for our rural banks, we're inspecting them annually, usually around that June period. For our urban banks, it's assessed quarterly. But we'll touch on that in a later slide, but we're looking at reviewing that frequency to make sure that that's actually the best approach we're taking and seeking advice from other councils as well.
So get on there, can we just, in the conscious of time, go through the whole slide, and then if we hold questions to the end, please. Thank you, guys.
So the kind of the rest of the presentation now, just looking at the different stages of the asset life cycle. So I've only been at council for the last 4.5 years, and one of the things I've noticed in that time, especially there's two boxes at the bottom, the asset monitoring and the operations and maintenance. That's been a real strength of our catchment operations team, and part of the benefit of now having this technical team sitting to the side is that we can further strengthen those other aspects of the asset life cycle to make sure we're actually seeking, I guess, the most benefit and the efficiencies out of that operations and maintenance space where we see a lot of our work happening. So our requirements and definitions, that's largely setting the scene, our levels of service, what's the community expecting from us, what are the assets we need to have to meet that. The next stage is the asset planning. A big part of, I guess, the way that we connect with that is through the canoa works that we see. So the picture here is just an example of one of the dashboards that we use as a capital works planner tool when we're like preparing submissions for tranches funding and things like that. These are one of the GIS tools that we use to understand our project spatially, and then all of the initial project data that sits behind it as well. Next up, we've got asset creation. So say in the shovel-ready funding that we had from 2020 to 2024, there was a few things happening around the district. The picture on the left and then in the middle, that's the during and after of the Ontario Street Stop Bank at Eastbourne. And then on the right-hand side is the groundwork that was done in preparation for the extension of the Mimiha Stop Bank at Wyndham. Moving on to the operations and maintenance space. So as we've already previously discussed, moving from that defect focused work programming to those larger asset segments and focusing more on remediation and less on waiting until the problems happened and then responding to it. One of the key things that we've struggled with in the past, or I guess limited us, is the available funding or the budgets to do this work. There's been a big focus on river bricks over the previous decades, and it's just making sure that we have that balance right between maintaining the health of the river, but also maintaining our infrastructure. Next steps that we're looking to, as I said, the transition of work programs, the adoption of the like reinstatement guidelines to ensure that we're getting consistency across all of our catchments, and then also formalisation of a risk assessment process, which touches to Councillor Rose's points around the defects and making sure that those really critical ones are being dealt with in a timely manner. Asset monitoring, you may be familiar with the look of some of these maps and dashboards. So as I said in the past, it's largely been defect focused. We're reporting on progress, and then we're just going to be moving towards more of a, what you can see on the right hand side there, it's a bit of a smaller picture, but colour coded 1 to 5 grades for stop banks. So that's almost, I guess, the high level
like initial view that we'll be giving, and then the defect data sitting underneath that. So hopefully that's a way more user friendly when we're wanting to look at that larger catchment picture about the overall condition and serviceability of our banks. One of the other, I guess, key changes or improvements is at the recent River Managers SIG, we were reminded about the national mandate for use of the asset performance tool. This, I guess, builds on our current inspection processes, but there's just a wee bit more robustness and a few more technical layers behind it to complement what we're collecting in the field. So over the next 12 to 18 months, we'll be looking at fully adopting that to make sure that we're working at that national standard that's expected of us. Asset renewal and reinstatement, left-hand side to be a familiar picture to many. Good example is the pump station. On the right-hand side is an example in the lower Reti of what stop bank reinstatement looks like. So without adding full capital investment through our maintenance works, we can actually reinstate the stop bank to design for a much lower cost. Asset disposal and retiring. We don't really do a lot of this. One of the key, at this stage, one of the key examples though is the concrete wall there. That used to be what was protecting East Gore. We've obviously replaced that with a much more kind of substantial bank now, which is very comforting. But I think in the future, and you would have heard Ella Lawton talk to some of the bigger picture planning with considerations to climate change and making sure that from an asset management perspective, we're actually taking that into consideration. Final point, which will be, I guess, the linking part to what you saw in your report. In late 2024, we had two audits done, a self-assessment and then an audit by PwC on our asset management maturity. So that main graph that you see up on the screen is detailed in the report. There's 16 components to asset management. The dark blue was where we were sitting at that stage. It's a snapshot in time. There has been improvement since then. The light blue is where we're hoping to get to over the next coming LTV cycle. The report, there's the tables at the end of it, detail from the action plan that we've created as a result of that assessment, how we're tracking towards those. So that's subject, I guess, to change a wee bit, but just an update for where we're at the moment. That's probably all from me.
Through Chair, just add as well that Steph mentioned the use of the River Managers SIG, and there's other areas in the country where they've got more well-advanced asset management programs, and so we've been heavily utilising that expertise from elsewhere across regional councils to help Steph and the team, but also to ensure that we're heading in the right direction. So we're very aware we're building this thing as we're flying it, and the audits that came through in 2024 gave us, as I say, a kind of foundational base for us to build from. So the investment through the long-term plan last time around has given us further resources to be able to dedicate to this really important part of our business. So and obviously ties in with the work that Patrick does in his team as well in regards to the insurance space, etc. So, yeah.
Thank you. Got Lyndall, you and Alston.
Thanks. Just a really quick question for my own understanding more than anything. The consequences assessment that you do, does that also consider the impact of doing work in one kilometre section to the literally flow on pieces or nearby kilometre sections?
The consequence part is not so much on the work that's being done, it's more so on that if there was a breach in that particular section of bank. What you're referring to though is what we'll be considering when we're proposing works, and that risk assessment would be captured in that space.
Okay, so sorry, dense. This time of the afternoon I'm a bit dense. Only this time of the afternoon. So prioritising a piece of work in that particular section doesn't necessarily take into account what impact that work might have on the sections downstream from it, or does it not matter?
The consequence will be driven by our governance strategic approach on what we want to
preserve more than something else. So it could be a lifeline, hospital, key pathways. They will be higher ranks than a paddock that's, yeah.
Okay.
You know what
I think I
mean?
understand.
So the consequence will be driven by what the impact is going to be if it fails.
Yeah.
And then that will drive how we go about repairing or prioritising the repair.
So through your chair, just add, so at the moment we're building that. We don't have a consistent approach for that for the whole region. And so one of the things, the opportunities for us and for the new team is to make sure that we've got consistent cross-regional prioritisation and consequence articulation, because what one work supervisor might have seen as a 3, another work supervisor might see as a 1. And then whilst there's a process that they go through to determine what work ends up happening, we haven't articulated that consistently and documented it. And so the work that Tim and the team will be bringing back to you is exactly that, so that the consequence, impact, likelihood framework is determined by yourselves. We'll bring you some options, some recommendations, but ultimately the where do we choose to protect and to what extent, that is absolutely a governance decision that we will be seeking.
Thanks.
Yes, so guys, you listed the assets and you've talked about the process around identifying. But so one of the things we do maintain in our drainage ditches or modified waterways, how does that fit into this program of work? Because actually there's quite a significant area.
Through the chair, agree, it was very significant. The asset management policy I mentioned before, which we'll bring forward in the coming month or so, proposes that we recognise land drainage as an asset. In the past, it's been a key part of our work program, but we haven't officially recognised it. So with that in place, we're going to ensure that those consistent asset management functions are applied to land drainage as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. Steph, why have we got 4 bridges? I thought they all belonged to SDC.
There's something I can see that we're trying to give over.
From my understanding, and Jimmy, feel free to jump in here, it's through historical arrangements. And it's something that we're quite keen with Tim's new leadership with us as well to resolve.
Yeah, I think there's discussions to be had where we can hand them back to council. So if we can give them to ICC, SDC, then conversations need to be had.
So are they in ICC or in?
I think they're ICC.
Yeah, we can't hold them so that's why we're responsible for them. If we can move the consent over to ICC and get them to take them.
It's the autonomy, is it?
The OTM Tim's will, and then Craig, and also walkway under the bridge of the project.
Worth also mentioning at this point, Chair, through you, that we're working much more closely with our TA colleagues on some of these conversations. They've got similar constraints as we do, not as many nobody's got enough ratepayers, everybody's struggling with infrastructure that's not necessarily as maintained as it could have been. And so making sure that I'm connecting with my counterparts at both the district councils and the city council is really crucial. And having recently welcomed Tim to our whānau, we're lucky to have that ICC connection strength there as well. So it's definitely part of what's on our wish list of things to be improving is how do we join up those work programs and those considerations. So we're not having to go in to do a thing and then SDC come after it. We're just trying to coordinate those things a bit more.
Thank you. That's good to know and good to realise that we've got those 4 things identified, because ultimately at the end of the day, history has shown that the local councils have been really good at making assets or building flood banks, and a decade or so later, none of them know who owns them. So it's really good that we've got that itemised, so we know who we can pass them on to, but we also know that someone's responsible for them at the moment. Unlike the Tuatapi flood bank down the half mile, which is it, who does it own? Who owns it now?
I think the stop banks stop above Tuatapi. I think we've got anything south of Tuatapi now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lyndall, there we go.
Thanks. Yeah, just last one. Lucy, you mentioned insurance. That made my spine tingle. So I'm assuming that when we've got our asset management policy and all this in place, we are in a safer place, I guess, because we can't unknow a thing once we know it. And North Island experiences would indicate that if you know a thing, you've got to at least have said that you're going to do a thing. So I'm assuming that kind of gives us some security, not lots, but some. Is that right? As far as insurance, should there be a thing happening?
Did you have a view? Did you want to jump in and straight off the bat, and then I can help if you need me to?
Yes, through you, Chair. Insurance, it's a very relevant thing, and as we see from other councils, the importance of having a substantial asset database that has the right information. One of the things I've been working on over the last couple of years is meeting with as many councils who are willing to meet with me to share their experiences and their learnings. I'd much rather that we learn from their experiences than wait until we have another 2020 or something else. And then go, yeah, I know, we're missing something. So there's a lot from that that we've taken on board, and as we're improving our asset database this year in preparation for this LPP, is taking into those considerations of things that have caught other councils out and making sure that we're actually actioning those and setting it as a priority. The asset database updating, it's hugely time consuming, but the value that we gain from it in an event like insurance is certainly worth the investment.
I've just add to that, Chair. So when Patrick started with us, it was one of the first conversations that I had with him, and that Steph was involved in that too, in terms of what we currently had insured in terms of our bank assets, in terms of replacement value versus book value versus. So it's an ongoing conversation. The premiums obviously significantly would increase if we went full replacement value for all 517 kilometres and all the bridges and all the dams and all of everything. So Patrick and I and my team, his team, are working through some of that. There's a lot of work happening in the sector as well on this, and I never remember the name of the rolling insurance parabolic or something, but Patrick is in that special interest group dealing with what interests we need to be thinking about from an insurance perspective and how we might need to change our approach as a sector. So it's corporate SIG and river managers SIG doing a joint piece of work there to say the market is getting harder, and what do we need to be front footing in terms of our budgeting, etc. moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you. It's reassuring to hear all of this, and thank you for your efforts. I guess my question is kind of around the fact that nature still is going to throw curveballs at us at sometimes with very little notice, and we might find ourselves, and Lucy might have a perspective on this as a controller sitting over in the building next door. Your information systems, would they enable you to, on those kind of occasions, update a controller and say, look, actually, right now, this month, we are carrying increased risk in this particular locality because there is a critical defect that we were going to attend to in a month's time, but we haven't got to it yet. Therefore, maybe you want to pay more attention to this particular corner of the region as an event unfolds. Is that going to be what you're able to do potentially with this?
Well, if I can answer, a lot of that is science-based, that we need the information back from the science team. We're building a relationship with the science team to build systems. We've just got funding for some more telemetry stuff that's going to enhance that for us. We're also looking at other technologies that we can use going forward, like the use of LiDAR, drones and things like that, which are going to give us more robust knowledge and more data to provide more information, to give us this sort of information to lead us in the right direction. We've still got a long way to go before we can really significantly say that, but we need to start building sort of an understanding of what a trigger is, so then we can start reacting to that trigger. So until we know what freeboard we've got in our network, we can't understand where we need to start pressing the button and saying, what should we do? And I think that's something that we'll work along and then find gaps and develop even further.
So one of the things I'd add from the first model that Joe Patterson's been working on with the River Ops team, as it was for the last couple of years, helps with some of that. Quite often when we get a little sniff of a potential flood or a big flow coming through, that team will activate, and it's a cross-organisational team, which includes the operational divisions who know where those weak points are, because to Tim's point, we haven't always had good systems and good visibility of the whole network, but we do have those work supervisors, those catchment and delivery folk in that function, as well as now the likes of Steph and others, so that they're able to provide a consistent message to the controllers when we need it. The likes of Chris Jenkins and others from the science team, to Tim's point, are absolutely invaluable, but they are also, with a huge amount of love, single points of failure for us, and we need to make sure that we are systemising that knowledge and that awareness, so that when I do need to be making those calls, we need to be making those calls, we've got the best information on hand. So constant iterative improvements.
We must be in a better position now than we were, say, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and just to add to Tim and Lucy's point, the reference you made to the defects, and is there a way that we can easily pull all that up? The information's sitting there in different parts at the moment, and Jimmy and a few of the work supervisors have been working together for a GIS-based mobile app. So then when there's an event and you have short notice of a day or 24 hours or less or whatever it looks like, to go out and do a rapid assessment of those key areas of concern. So usually that's flap gates. Recently we met with the Bay of Plenty, and the exact scenario you're describing there, they've already got that completed. So it was quite good to actually see that what we are working towards is achievable, and that use, in a flood response situation. So definitely something that should be sitting up on the screen looking pretty in the coming year or two.
Nice, thank you.
I think I'd just add one final thing, sorry, just on the trigger points that Tim mentioned as well. So what we have historically used are trigger points based on flows that are informed by the science division's knowledge and understanding of peaks as they move through our systems, which has been and will continue to be really helpful in a response. I know how much lag time there is from one point to another point based on tables that are in my controller folder. But what we're moving towards is a more joined up, more systemised approach, so that we can make those calls quicker, and that we can be more visible out in the world with them as well. So joint efforts.
Thank you. Is that all the questions covered, guys? Well, thank you very much. Can we move the receipt report, please?
I'll move the receipt report.
David, seconder. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's good. Just make sure Jimmy can see the defects when he's out. He creates them.
Thank you. Extraordinary and urgent business, there is none. Thank you. Now public excluded business.
We are moving into public excluded to maintain legal professional privilege to confirm public excluded minutes of the last IC meeting of January.
Can I have a move?
Yeah.
David, second, Roger.
Yeah, I'll see.
Already done.
Tree down and dust.
I just need to end this.
Yes, yep.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.